All right, what is going on? I've got feedback in my ear. Olivia, if you can figure that out, I can hear my voice overlaying. I'm not going to be able to do the show like this. Yep, it did. Olivia, thank you very much. We are now good. All right, off and running. Hello. Olivia, strong work. Sometimes that takes an entire segment to figure out. Olivia producing the show today. She is in for Porter Larson. And we're good to go. We're out and about today. I'll let you know where we're at and what we have going on out here at Tim Dahle Nissan. It's the holiday season, so you can treat yourself to a new sleigh from Tim Dahle with winter weather upon us. A reliable vehicle is essential, and Tim Dahle's Forever Warranty makes reliability a guarantee. You can take advantage of their year-end clearance, which is happening right now. No reasonable offer will be turned down. That sounds exciting. So hurry in today and drive away in a new sleigh even Santa would be jealous of. Wow, at Tim Dahle Ford, Infinity, 3 Nissan locations, 2 Mazda locations. Think Tim Dahle, think Jingle Bells. There you go, right out of the gates. Little Tim Dahle action. So we're out and about today. Come on by and say hello. We would love to see you. The address is 11155 South Jordan Gateway in South Jordan, Utah. So 11155 South Jordan Gateway here in South Jordan. It's Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. If you want to come by and say hello, we would love to see you. And you can check out all of their vehicles priced to move at their year-end sale. So best thing to do, put Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown in your GPS. If you use Google Maps or Waze or what have you, that's the best way to get out here. And we've got our station vehicle out front, and we are right inside in the front room. So we'd love to see you. Be here until about 6 o'clock tonight on a busy Friday drive. Happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it. It is time for the weekend, and we are jam-packed. We got a lot to do. We'll do a little NFL as the Week 17 slate wrapped up last night with a really, really poor, boring football game. But the Seattle Seahawks stayed alive in their race for the playoffs, and the Chicago Bears continue to really fail this young quarterback in Caleb Williams, who I think has a lot of potential. And if you're a Bears fan, you got to feel good that you finally have a decent answer under center. The offensive line is atrocious. According to PFF, they're the 29th ranked offensive line in pro football. Caleb's been sacked 67 times. And just for a little context, Bo Nix has been sacked, I think, 24 times. So Chicago has a great young quarterback, but they have a lot to do to surround him with better talent if they want to take advantage of it. Seattle's got a lot that they need to kind of fall their way over the next week or so for them to get in. And a good slate of NFL, Week 18, believe it or not, is right around the corner. And the NFL trying to expand their footprint just a little bit. Well, you're going to have 3 Saturday games coming up, and then a full slate of Sunday games breaking out into, of course, Monday Night Football. Don't forget, we are your home of the NFL in this market. The Monday night game this week will be really good. It's the Lions and the Niners, but, of course, a weekend of football ahead with the Falcons and the Commanders on your Sunday night tilt. Great one with the Packers and the Vikings. Massive game there. There's some injury news that we will get you up to date with so you can set your fantasy football lineups. Maybe you're lucky enough to be in the fantasy football championship. Looks like Jalen Hurts is going to sit against the Cowboys as Philly is still a 7.5-point favorite. But we'll get you up to date on all the injury news you need to know prior to the start of the pro football weekend. We had the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl today. It was a good game. Navy beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma went for 2 at the end to try to win the game, but Navy got the win 21-20. From a local perspective, pumped for this game tomorrow. It's going to be BYU and Colorado. And we'll talk about it. We'll get into it, get into the matchup and what you guys can expect and what it means for BYU should they be able to get their 11th win of the season, which would be quite an accomplishment year 2 in the Big 12. We've got one game going on right now. Of course, it's that time of year where college football can be watched and listened to year-round. It's Vandy and Georgia Tech. That is the Birmingham Bowl. Vanderbilt has a 7-0 lead as of right now. The line for the BYU-Colorado game actually moved earlier today. It's been pretty steady. It opened up almost even, then it moved away towards Colorado. At one point, Colorado was almost a 5-point favorite with some sports books. But as we sit here today, Colorado is now a 3.5-point favorite. That over-under is 55.5. Both Coach Prime and Coach Kalani have said all of their players will be available. Very minimal, if any, opt-out. So you should see Travis Hunter, should see Shedeur Sanders. Chase Roberts, who announced his intention to come back to play football for Brigham Young. That Chase Roberts, Travis Hunter matchup should be a lot of fun. So college football bowl season and 4 awesome games left in the CFP race. And that will get rolling coming up next week with some really, really good games. At least I think they'll be good games. Of course, the first round was a bit of a dud. No other way to put that, with a bunch of blowouts. But it'll start on Tuesday, Penn State, Boise State. Penn State's a healthy 11-point favorite. A lot of these spreads are indicative of a couple of potential blowouts. Texas is a massive 13.5-point favorite over the Big 12 champ Arizona State. And then the game I'm probably looking forward to the most, Ohio State, Oregon. It's hard to get a feel on this one. Ohio State is a 2.5-point favorite. Oregon's had the best regular season of any team in all of college football, but the way Ohio State looked against Tennessee, and quite frankly, the way Ohio State looks when they're right, I think will make the Rose Bowl in Pasadena really, really interesting. And then the final game, at least of the quarterfinals, will be Notre Dame and Georgia. And Georgia's a 2-point favorite. And that will be the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans, a game that Utah won once upon a time against Alabama. The latest on the transfer portal for the University of Utah, a wide receiver was added to the mix yesterday. Tell you who that is, learn a little bit more about him, and, of course, BYU as well. Teams that are still playing right now, there have been the teams that are playing in non-CFP bowls, they kind of have a feel for which of their players are going to head to the transfer portal. We'll give you the latest on BYU. They've got, at this point, 11 players in the portal. They have 5 players added to from the portal. University of Utah side of things, 13 incoming transfers as of right now. This is according to our friends at 24/7 Sports. And 23 players in the transfer portal, including a name that came down yesterday after we signed off. We'll tell you who that is. So a lot to get to. Watched a little Jazz basketball last night. I got to say, it was a fun game. The Jazz and the Blazers played right down to the stretch. 2 young teams trying to figure out what sort of hand they've been dealt, trying to figure out what sort of teams they have. But there was some really dynamic shot making in the fourth quarter. They're kind of going back and forth. And it was a Scoot Henderson jumper that allowed the Blazers to get that 120 win. So great time of year, fun time of year. Happy holiday season to you. Hopefully you had a great Christmas and have some fun plans for New Year's Eve. And from a sports talk radio perspective, you can kind of dip your toe into a bunch of different things. A little Jazz basketball, a little NBA, a little college football, a little Utah BYU, Alamo Bowl preview, NFL Week 18, and the potential NFL playoff clinching scenarios this weekend that we'll go over today on the program. So I want to remind you, come by and say hi. It is the year-end clearance sale with our friends at Tim Daly Nissan. And there's a bunch of locations, 3 Nissan locations. There's a Tim Daly Ford, Tim Daly Infinity. We were there about a month and a half ago. 2 Mazda locations as well. So come on by and say hi. And we would love to meet you. And you definitely can check out these vehicles that are priced to move. So Tim Daly Nissan Southtown is where we're at. It's 11155 South Jordan Gateway. Easiest thing to do is to put Tim Daly Nissan Southtown in your GPS and follow it out and come by and say hello. Our station vehicle is right out front, and then we're right in the middle of the front part of the showroom. Very easy to find. All right, good guest list right out of the gates today. One of our favorites to talk college football with is Kyle Bonagura. Kyle's going to roll by and bat leadoff today on this Friday afternoon. A special treat in store, so set your alarms for the 3 o'clock hour of the Drive on a Friday as Richard Smitty Smith, 40 years with the Jazz front office, will be live on site with none other than the legend himself and one of my favorite people I've ever met in my entire life, Frank Layden. That's right. Been a couple of months since we've been able to catch up with Frank, but Smitty and Frank are going to be live on site. So if you've never met the legend, Frank Layden, you don't want to meet me. I mean, let's be real. But if you want to shake Smitty's hand, if you want to take a picture with Frank, he loves doing that stuff. He's very affable and friendly. So if you want to set your alarms and make your way out here this holiday season to meet Frank Layden and Richard Smith, you will be in for a treat, as they're just 2 of the best people that I've ever met in my life. Very grateful to have them part of the show and part of my life for a number of years. Tony Jones will stop by in the 4 o'clock hour, the latest on the Jazz. Latest on the NBA, Pat Riley today coming out and saying that the Miami Heat are not trading Jimmy Butler. Now, we'll wait and see, and we're going to talk about it because it just makes too much sense for them to move on from Jimmy Butler. But I want to talk to both Smitty and Frank today about some of the NBA topics we've been digging into on the show, namely whether or not the product is different and whether or not it has suffered. Some interesting comments from a bunch of people over the past 24, 48 hours about how the game of pro basketball has changed and whether or not Ultimately, it's something that's good or bad for the sport, and I think both Smitty and Frank will be good with this. And then Tony gives the latest on the Utah Jazz. And then a rising young superstar in the ranks of broadcasting, play-by-play on the pro basketball and pro football side of things, Noah Eagle, who was on the call for Netflix on Christmas Day, a game that received a peak streaming number of 27 million people. So Noah's going to stop by today to give us the latest on the pro football landscape. We'll do a little NBA with Noah as well. So live today, Tim Daly Nissan out here in Southtown. Come on by and say hello. We would love to meet you, and they've got their year-end sale going on right now. Going to bring in Kyle Bonagura. We also have Richard Smith, Frank Layden, Tony Jones, and Noah Eagle. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners with a lot to do on a Friday. So before we get to Kyle, on a Friday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, it's your one-stop shop for all of your tailgating needs. Let's get to it. Time now for your opening tip. College football bowl season upon us, and really the only local intriguing storyline involving a game is tomorrow's Alamo Bowl down in San Antonio between Brigham Young and the University of Colorado. That is a 5:30 kick time on ABC. Ironically enough, we're home of the Utes, but we actually have that game. You can hear BYU Colorado on the radio side of things here on ESPN 700. The line opened up, as I referenced earlier, as even. It shot the way of Colorado nearly 5. Colorado at 1 point, I think one sportsbook had them as a 5-point favorite. It settled in at 4.5 for a couple of days, but this morning it moved. Sometimes that does tell a story as it moved the way of Brigham Young. Colorado, as we sit here today on this Friday afternoon, is a 3.5-point favorite. That over-under is 55.5. So this is going to be a fun game. Both BYU and Colorado landed in San Antonio on Tuesday. Both teams took in the SeaWorld experience. I did not know that SeaWorld was still a thing. I thought we were beyond all that. But nonetheless, the players went down there. Both Coach Kalani and Coach Prime spoke to the media. And I think one of the reasons why so many people are looking forward to this game specifically is typically we hear a lot of opt-outs. Hear a lot of – and look, Colorado – the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft is either going to be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. If there's a player that had the motivation and the reason, quite frankly, to sit this game out, it would be Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. That's probably going to be a top 2 or 3 pick and the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And look, I don't know how many of these players are going to play more than 1 or 2 series. I'm really hoping that we see Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, all of BYU's big dogs. I'm hoping that we see them all game long because I want to see what these two teams look like going head-to-head this year. Even though they were Big 12 foes, they did not play against each other this year. And so this will be the first matchup. Jake Retzlaff calling this the People's Big 12 Championship. Of course, that game went the way of Arizona State, and they are your for-real Big 12 championship. BYU likes to hang those mythical banners. They like to invent fake Pac-12 South championships because they weren't invited to the Pac-12 but beat a few Pac-12 teams, so they're like, let's hang a banner. So maybe BYU will hang the People's Big 12 Champ banner if they win this game. But these are two really good teams, two very well-coached teams, two teams that have had really good seasons, two coaches that will be in the mix for Big 12 Coach of the Year. Shedeur Sanders, it's not just – when you look at the weapons that he has at his disposal, it's not just Travis Hunter. It's mainly Travis Hunter with 92 catches and over 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns, average of 13 yards per catch. And then, of course, he plays a tremendous amount of snaps on the other side of the football. And I do wonder if we're going to see the Chase Roberts-Travis Hunter matchup. Chase Roberts announcing via his social media channels that he will be back playing football for Brigham Young coming up next year. And there will be a litany of NFL scouts at this one. So if you're Chase Roberts, are you searching that matchup for Travis Hunter? Are you confident enough in yourself that you think you can get that done and maybe change the minds of some NFL scouts? Because my guess is a couple of things probably happened with Chase, where he went through the process of getting feedback from NFL scouts and obviously didn't love what he heard from them, or else he would have gone to the pros, because I think Chase is an NFL wide receiver. And combined with the fact that I'm sure the BYU NIL collective stepped up and made sure Chase was very well taken care of, because that BYU wide receiver room is stacked, and they're going to be stacked next year. Darius Lassiter, there's the conversation about him potentially coming back, but all of the options that Jake has at his disposal, Chase feels kind of like his go-to. He led the team in receptions with 51, led the team in yards with 843, an average of nearly 17 yards per catch. 4 touchdowns, you want to see that a little bit higher, but Jake Retzlaff threw touchdown passes to 12 different wide receivers. And also, we're looking at 4 different running backs catching touchdowns. So Jake did a really good job of spreading this around when it comes to making sure everybody eats, right, as the kids say. So we'll see if that matchup comes to fruition, the Chase Roberts-Travis Hunter matchup. But Travis Hunter gets most of the attention. Shedeur Sanders has a litany of weapons at his disposal. LeJontay Webster had 70 catches. Will Shepard nearly had 50. Jimmy Horn Jr., a really dynamic playmaker. There's Draylon Miller. There's Omicron Miller as well. Dallin Hayden. He has 8 different wide receivers with double-digit catches, so he spreads it around really well. Colorado hit the transfer portal last offseason to grab a bunch of transfer portal players on the offensive line. And so Shedeur got his head kicked in last year, and they're not great along the O-line. I think Jay Hill will have a nice day tomorrow, making sure they pressure the quarterback, and they don't really run the football all that well. They don't need to. It's not part of their game, because this is Shedeur Sanders. He lets it fly. It's a lot of short dump-offs. It's a lot of intermediate routes, and he can go deep, as we've seen. So you don't really need to worry much about the running game, but if BYU can pressure Shedeur Sanders, and if Jake can get some protection from that offensive line and spread the love around to his receivers the way he has, this should be a really good football game. And from BYU's perspective, if you go 11-2, and 7-2 technically in conference, but you'll get your 8th conference quote-unquote win. This is not a conference game, of course, but it would be your 8th win against a conference foe, your 11th win of the season. You go 11-2 on a year where the Vegas over-under was 4.5. You were picked essentially next to last in the Big 12. This has to go down as one of the best seasons in BYU football history if they get this win. Now, if they don't get the win, this will go down, and BYU's had a couple of these years. Back in 2008, they started, I think, 6 or 7-0, and they got smoked by TCU. Then Utah just dump trucked them, and they ended up losing their bowl game. So there's actually, I think, more on the line than meets the eye here, because if Brigham Young loses, that's losing 3 of 4 after starting 9-0. But if they win, that's finishing 11-2 on the year and getting 8 wins against conference opponents, year 2 in the Big 12, that nobody saw coming. So the year has already been a tremendous success. As fans, we get greedy. And, if you're a Brigham Young fan, you saw at one point you were a top 4 seed with a first-round bye as the favorite to win the Big 12. And that's not the reality of what happened. And so maybe you always look at that as something that you wish could have gone down. But ultimately, if you don't think this year has already been a rousing success for Brigham Young, I don't know what to tell you, because I think it's been an amazing year. I think Kalani should be right up there for Coach of the Year in the Big 12. That will go to Kenny Dillingham. They won the conference. But BYU Colorado tomorrow should be a really good matchup as far as bowl season. All right, real quick. Unfortunately, we do not have a game to talk about for the Utes. They did not make a bowl, so the conversation for Utah football has been all about their coaching staff. The transfer portal giveth and taketh away. There's still nothing official on Keanu Tanavasa. We all kind of wait for news because he is awesome. That would be a tough one to lose after losing Cameron Calhoun to Tuscaloosa in Alabama. But right after we signed off air yesterday, Otto Tia, who is a wide receiver that played up at Utah State last year and had a really good game against Utah, announced his intent to leave Logan to come to Salt Lake to land 13 incoming transfers at this point. Now, there's plenty left because there are a lot of really good football teams that are still playing. And the letter of the law is you have to have your name in by tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, Saturday, December the 28th, is when you have to have your name in if you're going to transfer, unless you are still playing in the CFP, and they're going to have 5 additional days after the season is over. So there's a long way to go for Utah, for BYU, for all these teams to potentially add to the team, or unfortunately suffer some losses, because that's kind of the deal. But the latest news on the University of Utah that we did not get to yesterday is that Otto Tia is coming down to Salt Lake from Logan to play for the University of Utah. All right, we are live today at Tim Dahle. Tim Dahle Nissan is where you find us. Come on by and say hello. It's their holiday season. They're doing their year-end clearance sale. They've got a Ford location. They've got an Infiniti location, 3 Nissan locations, including where we're at today. They've got 2 Mazda locations. So come on by and say hi. Just put Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown in that GPS. Follow it out. As I referenced, Richard Smith and Frank Layden are going to be live on site. They've got a special APR going on as low as 0% available on all models. So over 40 Teslas in stock if you're a baller, if you're rolling that way, and over 70 EVs in total available. You can do the pre-orders on all their new 2025 Armadas, and Murano's available as well. It's their best deals of the year. If you're looking for a vehicle, these things are priced to move, and they're excellent. Come on by and say hi. All right, our first guest coming up on the other side will be Kyle Bonagura to talk a little college football. Don't forget Richard Smith, Frank Layden live on site, Tony Jones, Noah Eagle, a jam-packed Friday show. Happy Friday to you. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, some breaking news that just dropped about 5-10 minutes ago. Tayshaun Lyons has re-entered the transfer portal. Utah wide receiver Tayshaun Lyons has re-entered the transfer portal. If you recall, Tayshaun Lyons entered the transfer portal earlier this week and then withdrew his name after about a couple of hours in the portal. But according to 24/7 Sports, Tayshaun Lyons is now back in the transfer portal. Utah added a wide receiver yesterday from Utah State named Otto Tia, so maybe that's one of the reasons Tayshaun bounced. College football season, bowl season, CFP, transfer portal, and the like with our buddy Kyle Bonagura on a Friday afternoon. Kyle, happy Friday. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Spence. How are you?
I'm well. So, what did Christmas Day look like in the Bonagura household? How did everything go? Did Santa come? Everybody stay safe and have a good time?
Yes, Santa made it safely down the chimney. A 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, all their dreams came true. So it was a good Christmas.
1 and 4. So you're in the thick of it, aren't you? I didn't realize that. You are in. That's a battleground zone every day, isn't it?
Yeah, I just broke away from the battle right now because as in between the holidays, everyone's off, preschool, all that, so everyone's kind of running wild right now. So I got to escape to the back of the office to chat with you.
Right on. Well, I appreciate the time today. Let's just start with the silly dynamic that college football has free agency while the season is still going on. Like, this is so dumb. And there's so many dumb things right now about this great sport and this great product that we all love. But what are your thoughts on the current situation that, again, essentially is free agency while the season is going on? And this can't last. This is untenable. This has to change, Kyle, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has to change. But how does that happen? I don't know. I don't think I have a fully fleshed out fix here because this is really the problem that you have with tethering professional sport to education, right? You have semesters, you have quarters, like guys in the portal so they can enroll in time. If it's a semester, it's different than it's a quarter. You've got the coaching changes happening during the season. There's so many moving pieces that, you can't just say, okay, do this one thing and that solves anything, because with one fix, which is what the transfer portal was, right? It was a fix to allow these kids to have flexibility and all that they should have always had. But with that fix became this madness that we're watching play out right now, where it's in the middle of the season, it's in between bowl games, it's in the thick of all eyes should be on the playoffs right now, right? Like, in theory, it should be like the NFL, where the portal opens at the end of the season, right? But for some of these teams, that means your season's over in the last week of November, so that means you got to wait 2 months and then classes start. So yeah, it's a mess, and this is the result of kind of kicking the can down the road every time you were forced to do so by the powers that be, the courts, right, with all the lawsuits that have pushed for more rights. And if the NCAA would have fully embraced where this was headed a long time ago, you could have kind of reset and tried to design a system that could have taken this all into account. But nothing about the way the organization has ever acted makes me think that they'll ever just blow it up. They'll just have one. It's going to be plugging holes in a sinking ship until we eventually are looking at something that looks nothing like what we see today.
I wonder what your thoughts are on, the past few weeks we're hearing, the venture capitalist firms and private equity money are starting to kick the tires on purchasing portions of college football programs. And look, I don't know how that would work. I don't know the mechanisms on how to make that happen. If I did, I'd probably be a venture capitalist myself and not talking about sports for 4 hours every day on AM radio. There's got to be, involvement, of course, from local legislators in the state, because several institutions are publicly owned. And then there are private institutions like BYU. The model that we're hearing is there will be private equity firms that are looking to purchase, we'll just say Ohio State, 48% of Ohio State football, and give them $600-700 million up front that Ohio State can then go use on NIL endeavors to improve their facilities, whatever they want. And then, of course, the big payout for the VCs will come once the pro model is in place and that TV deal will shoot through the roof with the 40 biggest brands in college football, the dynamic that we've all discussed over the past couple of years. If that comes to be a reality, Kyle, and I feel like it's going to, is that a situation where, the people that get together and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on purchasing percentages of these teams will then be able to put central leadership in place, and we could have a Roger Goodell of college football and a central leadership office that can actually be forward thinking and see around corners and come up with solutions instead of reacting to problems?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should have to go that far before you have someone who's kind of in a commissioner's chair, right? I think there's a clear need for that to be there already. But again, just the structure of the sport makes all of it is so difficult to game out because of all the different variables in place, right? Because when you have these conference commissioners, like if you're the commissioner of the Big Ten or the SEC, and you're in this powerful role, like you're probably not. You're not trying to give that up, right? So you're pushing back at every step to prevent something like that from happening, and that's kind of how we got here, right? Is people trying to hang on to power for it's kind of human nature, I guess, to a degree. But I think that prevents a lot of what you're talking about from happening. I think that the more you see control of the outside parties, like the individuals that have to allow that to happen, it's not in their best interest. So I think you're going to get a lot of pushback there, and then. Eventually there needs to be more tiers to this sport, right? Like FBS as 130 teams, it's a joke, right? There's not 130 teams playing at the same level. So I think, whether it's 40, whether it's whatever the number is, I think there probably should be 3 divisions within FBS, right? There's so many different ways this could go. That's why, I try not to, get too in the weeds with all this, because it's just so hard to predict, right? I think it's the idea of private equity, you understand that those talks are happening, and there's a good chance that it does happen to some degree, but we're not there yet, right? And so to know exactly what it's going to look like, it's just so hard to understand, if this happens, then this will happen. If you push this button, then this lever drops, right? There's just too much of that going on to have a great sense of what the sport's going to look like when the new TV deals kind of are up for auction, so to speak.
All right, let's talk about some actual football that has been played and will be played coming up. I wonder what your thoughts are, because I haven't spoke to you since we saw the first round of the CFP games played. And duds, ultimately, in my opinion, and it led to wailing and gnashing of teeth and angry people who cover the sport talking about, no more auto bids. And look, I don't know how because you cannot, in my opinion, at least, and obviously it's my opinion because I'm about to speak into the microphone, so I didn't really need to say that, but you cannot devalue the regular season in college football. You just can't do it because it's what makes this sport great, that every week feels kind of like do or die for college football teams. And I do think you need to continue to find a way to value winning your conference as well. But I don't think, we're in the Big 12 footprint. I don't think Arizona State should have had a first-round bye, and I can understand why people are upset that Boise got their first-round bye, even though Boise had a great year and barely lost to Oregon, the best team in the country. But I also can call it how it is, and, maybe these aren't one of the 4 best teams in college football, and ultimately, should SMU have really been able to get in, even though they played their conference championship game close? I don't know. I mean, like everything else, there are no easy fixes, but it seems like a lot of people that wanted the expanded 12-team format are now upset at this format too. So I guess the way I'll ask the question, long way to land the plane, did the first round CFP games change your opinion on what this sport should do to crown its national champ?
I don't. I actually think it's fine, right? There's blowouts. There's going to be blowouts. That's the sport. There was blowouts with 4. There's blowouts in the NFL. There's blowouts in the Final Four. The national championship game a few years ago was 65-7, right? So I think we just have to understand that whatever the format is going to look like, there's just going to be blowouts. And yeah, there was all of them. There were no competitive games this time, and that leads to this type of discussion, right? It's fair. It's kind of the natural way to go with it. How do we make things better? But I think at the same time, what we saw during the regular season this year, I thought was so much better because it kept everyone in the country relevant through the whole year. I mean, we have the whole country still relevant, right? If you look at a map and you see where the teams are, like those teams are still a part of the conversation in college football, and that just was never the case during the 4-team, right? It was the Pac-12 was eliminated with 3 weeks to go, a few times, right? And that was just unhealthy for the sport. Before that, like the BCS with 2, like that was a joke to have just 2 teams play for it. Yeah, like those are probably the 2 best teams, but also, I still want to see. I still wanted to see these good matchups at the end of the year. Like this round, right? If you look at it, right, Texas, Arizona State. All right, Arizona State won its conference. Let's see what we can do against. Let's see what we can do against Texas. If you get blown out, at least we know we got blown out, and we just didn't decide it was going to be a blowout before the game took place, right? We had a round of games on what was it, like December 21st is when the games were, right? Like most years, there's no college football that day, right? So are we saying that we'd rather just like not have these like on paper really good matchups? Yeah, they were blowouts, but like I'd rather be sitting in front of my TV on that day watching those games as opposed to like the galleryfurniture.com bowl or something else that doesn't really matter, right? Like this for me it has been a good format, and I don't think like the results of the first round in year one make me feel otherwise. And yeah, I think there's tweaking to do with seeding and buys and all of that, but I think like where we're at is so much better than where we were before that I'm kind of I'm okay looking over like those non-competitive games in the first round.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I'm going to ask a long question, Kyle, and while I'm asking the question, I'll just ask and see if you can move around the house to get some better reception. And then I'm aware that you have to deal with 2 young girls as well. So let's kind of reset a little bit, see if we can get a better connection with Kyle. The next round will start on New Year's Eve. It's Penn State, Boise State, and then on Wednesday the other 3 games will be played: Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, and then Notre Dame, Georgia, the final game. So we'll get to those games in a moment. Kyle Bonagura is our guest. Don't forget, coming up in about 20 minutes from right now, Richard Smith and Frank Layden live on site. So if you've never met the legendary Frank Layden and Smitty, they are the best people, and they'd be happy to take pictures with you, shake your hands out here at Tim Dahle Southtown, Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. So put that put that address in your phone and your GPS and follow it out here if you want to meet Frank. So we'll bring Kyle back on now. So, Kyle, from a local standpoint, unfortunately, Utah, of course, not bowl eligible, so we don't have a game to talk about with the Utes. The last time we had you on, I asked you about Jason Beck and Devin Dampier, so we won't go down that route. But the game that we do have, ironically enough, we're the home of the Utes, but we have the BYU Colorado game on our radio station. So it's tomorrow. It's 5:30. Colorado's a 3.5-point favorite. These 2 teams landed in San Antonio on Tuesday. And you've done a number of pieces on Dion and Colorado, and obviously this will bring a massive amount of attention. I would imagine the rating's going to be super high. BYU is a massive brand on their own right, and then everybody watches Coach Prime. And Colorado is among the most watched teams in all of college football. Give me your thoughts on the Alamo Bowl tomorrow in San Antonio.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the slate of bowl games, non-playoff games, it's probably the most interesting one. The fact that you have the Heisman Trophy winner who's not sitting out, you have the potential number 1 overall pick in Shedeur Sanders not sitting out. That's a pretty good starting point for a game that is involved in the playoff, right? And so that's pretty intriguing. For what I understand, BYU hasn't really had many defections, although I haven't been keeping close tabs on that. But yeah, and the fact that they were, in the same conference, tied for first place, it's kind of this consolation Big 12 title game in a way, right? They, both teams finished 7-2 in the conference, and probably felt like they deserved a chance to play to get into the playoffs. So I'm excited to see this one. A few weeks ago, I went down to Provo. I had a chance to sit down with Jay Hill and just kind of talk about the season that he's been through. I mean, heart attack 2 days before the season opener, and then kind of dealing with that, kind of in recovery on a parallel path with the season. It's I wrote about that. I've got a story publishing tomorrow. The BYU fans will probably enjoy reading, because that story about what he's been through this year is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, in fact, since we're in that space, let me follow up, and without spoiling it, because we want people to go read it, Jay is a friend of the show. Once upon a time up here in Salt Lake, obviously at Weber, and I think a lot of people around here figured he would get a head coaching opportunity quickly, and that hasn't come to fruition yet. He's still very young. My guess is he's going to have a program to run on his own. Tremendous recruiter. It took a little bit for the new players to get used to his system, but year 2 under Jay Hill, that defense has been really good. So I would imagine that was the first opportunity you had to meet Jay and sit down with him. What were some of the main takeaways? What do you think makes him such an effective recruiter and defensive coordinator?
Yeah, when you sit down with him, it's really just like the energy that he exudes is right off the bat, right? There's a kind of a comfort level that exists. I'm sure this is the case with almost anyone who sits down with him and starts talking. He's just like enjoyable to be around. He's got this kind of positive energy that, it really seeps into the team. I know his players, I talked to a few of them about, just kind of the impact he's had in the program, and they rave about him in a way that you don't usually hear players talk about coaches. Like, right? It all felt like very genuine, I guess is what I'm saying, that they really believe in him as a coach, believe in him as a person. Look, BYU was one of the worst defenses in college football 2 years ago. This year they were right there at the top in the Big 12 in every meaningful statistical category. So, yeah, and that handful Saturday with Shedeur and Travis Hunter. So, like I said before, it's about as good as you can hope for in a bowl game, given all the different factors that are taken away from those games these days.
All right, Kyle, before I set you loose on a Friday, get you back to the fam, I was thinking about this morning. I feel like, from my vantage point, I feel like there have been moments watching Ohio State this year where I felt like that's the best team in the country. I feel like there are moments I've watched Oregon this year and feel like that's the best team in the country. I would say the same thing about Georgia. I'm not as high on Texas as most, but they're obviously really good. Of the remaining teams left, there are 8 teams left in the CFP. How many would you say qualify from your prism as potentially the best team left standing?
Yeah, so just going right down the list, obviously Oregon and Ohio State both can get there. I would remove Georgia, actually. Just, you don't have your starting quarterback. You're going to do it with a backup. Like, maybe it's possible, and I'll be wrong in a couple weeks, but I just don't think that you can be confident in a team with its backup quarterback. Texas is right there, of course, and I thought Notre Dame looked really good in that playoff game too. So I think that's the group I would sit with. Look, they're all these are good teams. You can sing their praises, but look, Boise State's it's not going to happen. Penn State, it's not going to happen. At least I don't think so. And Arizona State, again, great season. Kenny Dillingham among the best coaching jobs in college football year. But there's tiers here, right? And that's not a team for me that has a chance to win. So those are the 4 that I think have a shot. And I think that's what's exciting about this field, right? Like, you have 4 teams where, you can be like, I could probably be convinced of any of those 4 of why they deserve to kind of be sitting in that chair at the end. So again, this is for me, the playoff format is a good thing that we have all those teams still in the mix.
Kyle, thank you, my friend. We'll let you get back to the fam. Happy holiday season. Have a great new year, and we'll get you back on soon.
All right, thanks, man.
Kyle Bonagura from ESPN covers college football with just horrific cell reception. So apologies to the audience there. We did our best to get through it. But Kyle has a piece coming out on Brigham Young. So if you do not follow him, he doesn't tweet much, but he does send out the links to his work at Bonagura. ESPN is where you find Kyle. So appreciate Kyle's time. Some breaking news just came down. The Sacramento Kings are parting ways with Mike Brown. So the Sacramento Kings are firing their head coach, who, if memory serves, signed a 3-year extension. Signed a 3-year extension this offseason with Sacramento. It was in June. His contract goes through the start of the 2028 season, I believe. And then 6 months later, they're 13-18, 12th place in a season with a lot of expectations. They bring in DeMar DeRozan, add to De'Aaron Fox, and, of course, Domo Sabonis. So Mike Brown has been fired. Man, that is wild. After signing an extension with the Sacramento Kings, it is kind of that time of year. And we're going to bring in Smitty and Frank Layden live on site to talk about how, when you're analyzing professional basketball and you're analyzing the NBA, this is the time of year where you start to realize who you are. And this is the time of year where you start to realize sort of what hand you've been dealt. And so we'll analyze the Jazz. You know, most teams have played 30, 35 games in pro basketball. The Jazz and the Blazers had a pretty fun game last night. So we will analyze that with Smitty and Frank coming up. If you missed it, there was a little bit of breaking news that came down just a few minutes ago. Sorry, I'm doing 15 things at once here. Tayshaun Lyons, University of Utah wide receiver, has hit the transfer portal again. This is the second time. He entered the transfer portal a few days back, withdrew his name from the transfer portal after just a number of hours, and he has gone back in the transfer portal. This is according to 247 Sports. Utah brought in a wide receiver yesterday from Utah State in Otto Tia, a player who has great measurables and had a really good game against the Utes, by the way. 6'4", 220, and maybe Tayshaun saw that and decided to bounce, or like everybody else, ultimately probably had a little bit of an offer. An agent probably called him, said we can get you this on the open market. No word as of now on Keanu Tanavasa. One of the names that when you saw it announced, it hit. It stung. He had a great year for Utah last year. And so some rumors about potentially heading down to BYU, but nothing official with Keanu Tanavasa, and he and Cameron Calhoun are the two names that really hurt. I think Carson Ryan's going to go down to BYU and play well. You know, he's a tight end. Didn't get a lot of run for the Utes this last year. Sione Fotu as well. Jack Bomeister's headed to Texas to punt for Steve Sarkisian. No official word on Sam Heward yet, or no official word on Brandon Rose. And obviously we know that as of now, Isaac Wilson withdrew his name from the portal. He's coming back to Utah, and he joins Devin Dampier in that quarterback room for maybe a battle for number one. It feels like the job is Devin's. I'm not going to lie. I mean, obviously he had the year he had with John Beck at New Mexico last year. So we'll see. We'll keep you up to date. Anything that comes down. It's wild this sport has free agency while the games are still being played, but that's the reality of the situation. All right, we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan, Southtown. Come on by and say hello. We would love to see you. If you want to meet Frank Layden or Richard Smith, they're live here on site. It's their best deals all year, okay? So you have up to $7,000 off new 2024 Rogues, and the 2025 Rogue Rock Creek is now in stock. Up to $9,200 off on new Pathfinders, a great SUV this time of year with the weather getting cold. New 2024 Kicks and 2024 Sentras for as low as $19.99. All new 2025 AWD Kicks are in stock. It's special APR with their year-end clearance sale. Available on all models as low as 0%. So over 40 Teslas in stock if you want to roll that way, and over 70 EVs in total available. Pre-orders on all new 2025 Armadas and Muranos are available here at Tim Daly Nissan Southtown at 11155 South Jordan Gateway. So put Tim Daly Nissan Southtown in that GPS, follow it out, and come on by and say hello. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Coming up, live on site, Richard Smith and the legend himself, Frank Layden, for a very special holiday hour conversation. Later on, it's Tony Jones and it's Noah Eagle. We got a lot to do on a Friday. Happy Friday to you. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, here we go. Live on site today. We're a little south, but it's not that bad. Come on by and say hi. It's Tim Daly Nissan Southtown, 11155 South Jordan Gateway. Easiest thing to do is put Tim Daly Nissan Southtown in your GPS and follow it out. They've got vehicles priced to move. It's their year-end sale. But most importantly, if you've never met the legend himself, Richard Smith, and the actual legend himself, Coach Frank Layden, live on site. Coach, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. How are you, sir?
Same to you and your family and to everyone you know and you hold dear to you.
Certainly.
You deserve it.
Thank you, sir. And Smitty, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Great to see you.
Thanks, man. We had a nice time driving out here. I went to see the new Bob Dylan movie yesterday with some friends.
Lovely.
Over here at Jordan Commons.
Okay.
And I have friends who live near the University of Utah, and they came out and they said, "Gee, I thought I was driving to California or something coming out here because they never go past 21st South."
Sure.
So I said, "Come on, I'm trying to expand your world and trying to get you into a new realm." And Coach and I came out here, and beautiful place here at Tim Daly Nissan, and they have a great place here and great folks, ready here to help you, I know.
Recommend the movie?
Oh, it was great.
You enjoyed it, okay.
It was good. The actor, Timothy Chalamet, a young guy, he does a great job with Bob Dylan. I had gone back and watched a few early Bob Dylan things, interviews and stuff, and didn't realize how much this actor looked like him back there in the early days when he was in his early 20s in New York, and he did a fantastic job, and it was a great storyline, learning about the early years he was in New York.
Cool, very nice. Yeah. I'll have to check it out. Coach, I wonder how much Jazz basketball are you watching this year?
Well, I can get on TV.
Okay.
So, that's a lot. I watch every game.
You watch every game?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think the progress is coming along with some of these younger players we're trying to learn about?
I have to be honest with you in this respect, and in all fairness to everyone concerned. I don't know what it was like from the beginning.
Okay.
I don't attend their workouts. I don't know what they're looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah.
I think they've got some good young talent. Does it become will eventually be a foundation, or is it what you're building the house on? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's sometimes I like them very much. Sometimes I find it a little frustrating, but I think that's with all of us. I don't know. It's interesting. I said to Smitty coming over, I was watching the game by myself last night. I'm watching the game, and it could be anybody, all right? Didn't matter whether it was Jazz or somebody else. And I said to myself, is this a game that I recognize? What has happened? I'm thinking, I know there's going to be changes, whether it's baseball, football, or anything else. If I look at, say, baseball, has there been great changes? Yeah, in equipment, size of the athlete, training perspectives, stuff like that. Are the athletes better? Yeah, but the records keep going up. Guys are still hitting home runs and what have you. So in football, linebackers were, when I was playing, they were 160, 180. Now they're 280.
Right.
The game changes, the physical side and everything. And I watch basketball and I say, is this a game I don't recognize? It's not the game I started out playing. And I think somewhat, if I had to say, and if I had to sum it up in one word, what is different? I'm not saying by any means it's not better. The athletes are better. The game is probably better. There's the refereeing is better, and certainly the players from 1 to 12 are better. But I do say this, that I don't know what it's about. Is it about just trying to outscore the other guys, outplay them, outrun them? Is it a foot race or is it a marathon?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really have to sit down maybe with a couple of old timers and a couple of new people in the game and see what they're trying to attain.
Yeah.
I don't know what their goals are. I have to be honest with you. I think you used to be able to put, say on a team, on a coach and the staff or an organization, this is a team that plays control basketball. Red Holzman held the ball, And the fans used to holler, defense in the Garden. But it wasn't defense. It was how selfish they were.
Mm-hmm.
They never turned the ball over. They always took good shots, and they were good shooters. They were good players, obviously. You know, and I'm going back to the championship teams of Bill Bradley, those guys. But anyway, yeah, and I don't know. I find it very hard to do that with teams today. Is there some coach out there or some team out there that I can say, wow, you're going to have your hands full because Jerry Sloan is coaching, and they're going to be a tough defensive team, and he's going to make great demands of them, of their bodies, and what have you. Frankly, and without interjecting Jerry Sloan there, I can't put my finger on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that crazy? I don't know.
No, it's interesting because I wondered and I was going to ask you about the actual product because and Smitty, you and I have talked about this. There's this debate that's going on right now about why people aren't watching the NBA the way they used to. Now, the Christmas Day games pulled some good numbers. They were also awesome games, and they featured some of the biggest stars that we have in the league. But, Smitty, when you hear Frank talk about the product and not being better or worse, but just being different, is it the analytical effect where everyone's trying to hunt threes? Is everyone trying to play like Boston? Like, what are your thoughts on the different product?
Yeah, I think a couple things, Spence. One is that the NBA has set up the defensive rules over the last 10 years to encourage more open play. More, you can't hand check, you can't get guys out in front, you can't keep them, with your hand or with an arm bar, and so guys have a free reign to the basket. So, and then you couple that with the analytics that everybody's into now, and some teams do it way overboard, in my opinion. Other teams use it to their advantage, but it's. But all the analytics show that you have a greater chance of winning an individual game if you either get all your shots at the rim, which means driving the ball one-on-one, getting in a lane, getting a seam, getting to the rim, or getting there, the defense collapses, and then you kick it out to a three-point shooter. So everybody is trying to get, if you look at their shot charts in recent years, most teams are really overweighted where you have all these attempts at the rim or all these attempts from three-point land. Now, last night, for example, the Jazz shot 42 threes, which is a big number.
Yeah.
Now, they had it rolling. They shot 50%. If you can shoot 50% from three, then you should be taking that number of threes, right? But they had a great night. It fell short because it plays at the end of the game, and they got beat on a buzzer beater. But that's what all the coaches are coaching now. And then to Coach's point, the guys are more athletic. They're quicker. They get their first step quicker off the bounce because the defense is in a tough position, because unless you're a really good reactionary player and you can really stay in front of a guy, you're usually playing a step or two off because he's trying to get an advantage putting the ball on the floor and getting to the rim. So if you play off him too much, then he's coached to just shoot over the top. Just take the three, step back, or whatever you got to do, and shoot it over the top. And if you come up on him and you think you're a good defensive player, he's going to put it down, and he's going to try and get in that lane, and that's what they coach him. There's no more screening. They're all fake screens. Everybody plays slip screens. They don't actually screen a guy like John Stockton used to do. There's no weak side action to screen to get a guy open, to get a guy cut baseline or anything like that. Everything's 5 out. That nobody plays through the post anymore, and that's because of the drive of analytics now, and coaches believing that they have a better chance to win the game when they play that kind of ball, either at the rim or three-point shooting.
I wonder, is there any way to zig when everybody's zagging? Like, okay, everybody's playing like this, and everybody looks at what Joe Mazzulla's done in Boston, but not everybody has that roster.
Right.
So it's like when everybody said, okay, well, Steph is doing this. Can we do it? No, you can't do that because he's one of one.
That's right.
So I wonder if there's a way to coach it differently, to come up with a different game plan to counter what everybody's doing, because not everybody has that talent. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but I think you have to be who you are, and you have to coach what you know.
Okay.
And what you believe in, all right? Come out and spread the floor, all right? there's a lot of coaches who don't realize that, the offense starts, the strong side, the width of the floor is being started the minute you retain possession of the ball, whether that be a steal or a rebound. Everybody should start to get ready to form that infield when they get down into the shooting area. I don't see enough of that, I think. And that has to be by design, it has to be practiced, and it has to be preached. But whether you hire, I don't know, Pat Riley, all right, to come back into the game and say, all right, go coach, would he be stumbling by this? No, I think Pat would probably recruit or sign players that fit into his pattern, and then he would coach them accordingly,
Yeah.
But I think the game is still won from the inside out, counting what you're going to get on fast breaks and whatever. If 48, what they shoot last night? I said 48.
42 threes.
42 threes, and how many of those threes were good shots?
Right.
I mean, we don't know,
Yeah.
How many of those led to baskets down the other end, giving the ball up? So I mean, you'd have to see the game, but I think you've got to have a philosophy, and you got to live within that philosophy. It was like Jerry Sloan and I. We never had an argument. I mean it. We never discussed something about players or what we were going to do at a certain time in the game or in the season. We seem to agree all the time. But one time we did have a thing, is that I used to like to see the defenses slide within each other. And Jerry Sloan was always over the top. You got to play your man, get in his jock, stay on top of him. And overall, his philosophy was correct. We fouled a little bit more, but we started to get a reputation of being a pretty good defensive team.
Smitty, I wonder what your thoughts are on the dynamic of, because to Coach's point, you have to be who you are, and analyze your personnel. And as I said, I mean, maybe Joe Mazzulla's a genius, or maybe he has the best roster in pro basketball. And you can't replicate what other teams are doing when you don't have that personnel. Mm-hmm. So is there some way that, because you have to adapt and adjust, and if what you're doing is not as good as what the other guy's doing, maybe there's a different way you can approach playing the game, or have analytics just seeped in? Because the other thing I hear a lot of people say is they feel like most teams play the same. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think everybody's has some kind of a weighted usage of the analytics stuff. Sometimes it's the head coach. Sometimes it comes from the front office, from a general manager or player personnel guy, who's an analytics-driven person. But, hey, sometimes in this day and age, Spence, it even goes all the way to the owner, because several of the owners now are tech guys,
right,
whether it's the Jazz owner Ryan Smith, who comes from the tech background, or Steve Ballmer and with the Clippers, or Mark Cuban with Dallas, and Vivek Ranadiv, who's the owner of the Sacramento Kings. They all have tech backgrounds, so they wait. Also, they think that kind of stuff makes a lot of sense. One of the things I see in the game is, to Coach's point, is that I don't think there are enough players who play defense aggressively enough to force the action of what they want. In other words, to be the one who dictates the action. There's too many players and too many teams in the NBA who are reactionary defenders. In other words, they sit back and they wait to see what the offensive guy is going to do, and then they try to catch up, or they try to stop him when it's too late. One of the Jazz's issues all last year and so far to this point this year is that they have a problem with their transition defense in particular, because they don't get out and stop the ball when it gets over half court, and they don't make the dribbler pick up the ball and get it in his hand for a second or two, make him pass it east to west, so that then the defense can get back to Coach's point and set up that defense, that interior defense, and play inside out defensively. Nobody does that, and the Jazz don't do it now defensively. So that's either because they can't do it, or because they're too lazy to do it as individual players, or it's because they're not they don't have the physical ability to get up and stop guys early, in their track, and that's it. But that's not just them. That's a lot of the NBA. Oklahoma City's getting a lot of credit so far this year for being a top defensive team. And that's one of the things I see them when I watch them play, is that they get up in you early, and they dictate the action. In other words, they're trying to tell the offense, no, we're not going to let you run your play and get the ball to the guy you're trying to get it to. We're going to get up in you. We're going to get in under you with the ball. We're going to deny the guy who's trying to get up over a screen to get the pass, and now we're making you do something you don't want to do from a defensive standpoint. Not enough teams do that in the NBA. Most teams sit back and try and recover, when it's too late. I mean, how many times do you see guys coming over half court in transition and the defensive players back up, and then all of a sudden they're at the rim and it's all over.
You see it at the end of a quarter. We let the guy out there, keep us be like saying to the quarterback, all right, there's only a few seconds left, so you go back there and look around and see what you want to do, rather than being the aggressor and taking that away from them. I learned something I thought was important early in my career in the pros. Hubie Brown was the coach at with Atlanta, and he used to say, tell me 3 things that I can take away from the other team. What 3 things do they do the best of? And those are 3 things I want to go after, and I want to change. The other thing I thought was interesting was sense of responsibility. Let's take, for instance, I'll take him because he happened to be one of my favorite players, was Bobby Hansen. Bobby Hansen would have the tough job of taking on Michael Jordan.
Or Magic, right?
Yeah, Magic. But you can't stop Michael Jordan or Magic.
Yep.
All right? So I'd say, well, what's the average? Well, I don't know, let's say Michael Jordan's averaging 28 points a game. I'd say, all right, can you hold him to 24? Can you hold him to 26? That's hold him. Is there keep them within range. If we can keep this team, if everybody does that down the line, and we have them off what their production is going to be, all right, and we see a sense of responsibility. Someone jumps over you a couple of times, beat you, then someone else is coming in to do the job. And the players should all know that they're going to get this opportunity. And if they do, then challenge them to do that. But our analytics are a little different. But I thought we could win if we gave up 9 offensive rebounds and a half. That's 18 in the game. That seems like a lot, but we're not going to go above it, and the chances are we're going to fight to stay down below it. All right, we're going to so many fast breaks. We're going to make so many free throws. We're going to get to the free throw line. Anybody gets an offensive rebound automatically has the option to get the next shot, to take it right back up. We're not going to fool around with that. You get an offensive rebound, great. So you get guys like John Drew who just eat up the offensive board to get the ball back so they could get back to the board and maybe get a 3-point play out of it,
Yeah.
And I think there's a time when you have to shut it down. And you have to say, that's enough 3 points for today, 3-point shots for today.
Yep.
Except for, if it's on a sec or something. But
right.
everyone else, that's it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they pump them up there. And I don't know, like I say, it's a different game. It's a different game than I remember. And I'm not sure that if everybody buys this game, it's a little too wild sometimes.
Yeah, and that might be to your point, Spence, about the ratings and stuff. I think we've talked before about a lot of different other options of entertainment and how to spend your time. Nowadays with the access to the internet and the younger generation having other options that they prefer to go to. But I think the coach's point, if you're playing a sloppy game, if you're playing just, chuck them up like, some games look like a version of the All-Star game where guys just come over half court and one pass and shoot, or no pass and shoot, whatever it is. And I think sometimes the fans at some point, they go, well, are they really trying, or is it just kind of we're just freewheeling out here?
Yeah.
Well, it might be owners and coaches who are afraid of the players.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm not going to take a shot, or I'm not going to get a shot?
Yeah.
Then you won't be around long for me. So I mean, you got to take control, and then you got to get support from above. Authority comes from above, and so the owners support the coach. The coach sets out a plan, and they either execute or they don't. And then somewhere along the line, we have to get good players.
Right.
We can't do it with poor players. But if we have good players, we should have expectations, and we should try to reach those expectations. And if we don't, we should be able to answer for them with the salaries that they are at.
I think one of my favorite old Frankisms was if you're going to make a mistake, make it a big mistake, right? Go big, right? And so I wanted to get your thoughts on what we're seeing from Walker Kessler, who really is having a solid third season. I don't know if he reminds you of Mark at all, but he really can protect the paint. He's a great shot blocker, and he's still very young. As you've watched Walker Kessler play, Frank, what are some of your takeaways?
I like Walker Kessler very much, and I like what he does. He gets to the boy, blocks some shots and everything else. But I wouldn't compare him with say Mark Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Eaton could stand. Well, Kareem was the one that told me he was scared to death of Mark. He said he's always afraid to hit him in the head sometime. You know, remember Kareem used to wear binoculars.
The goggles.
Goggles.
Yeah.
And so because he said all he looked up and all he saw was elbow to elbow outside him, and he didn't face that many guys. And I think the old saying about just keep you between your man and the ball, and it's ball be man. It's for everybody. And I like the idea that the blocking of shots is something. I don't know. Defensive Player of the Year. Who is it?
This year?
Well, last year was Rudy. Rudy Gobert has been the Defensive Player of the Year for the last 6 years.
And is he the Defensive Player of the Year? That's all. I'll ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he gets the award, but is he?
Yeah.
Who does he guard? Who does he take out of a game? Everybody's a guy the size of him has to be taken out by the other team, does he?
Are you asking who, Rudy?
Yeah.
So this year,
who is it? Not who is he as a guy? No.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player, tough player, and everything else.
Yeah.
But to say he's the best defensive player in the year, then maybe we're starting at what's wrong with the league.
Yeah, this year the favorite is Victor Wembanyama. The Vegas favorite is the young kid who plays for the Spurs.
Yeah.
Have you seen him play?
Yes.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
Yes.
Have you?
I mean, have I ever seen anything?
Yeah.
It's all ahead of him. Yes, he's a fine player.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm looking for that guy. Like I said, I'm looking for that guy who says, "Yeah, I'm throwing my body out there every night to be the best defensive player on this team."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it'll differ because of the size of the athletes and what have you.
Smitty, Walker at this point is averaging nearly 3 blocks a game. He's at 2.9 blocks a game. He's at 11 boards. So 10 points, 11 boards, 3 blocks. You and I last year talked a lot about what's up with this kid who everybody was pumped about year one. I think he probably, for me, is the best story for Jazz basketball this year. What have you seen year 3 growth from Walker?
Yeah, well, I think what he's doing now, the way he's playing, for me, is it looks like the game is slowing down a little bit for him. It looks like he's not trying to do, things that are out of his lane. In other words, he's just doing the things that come natural to him, but that feed into what his profile and skill set are. He's a big guy. He has good reactions, so he can move. He can come and help you as a help defender at the last second at the rim. I think that's where he gets a decent number of his block shots is as a help defender. He does a good job of squaring up and making himself big and make his guy shoot over him. And then he's got very good hands around the rim, so he secures the ball pretty well. The other night in Cleveland, I think he had, was it 8 offensive rebounds he had? And last night, I think he had 3 or 4. And, he's doing what you want a big guy to do. Everybody wants players to be something that maybe they're not capable of being because they project everybody to be, Kareem or to be Shaq or whoever it is, But they, if he just does the stuff he's capable of doing and stays in that lane, then he can be a good contributor to what they're trying to build as a group, which, they're a ways away from that. But he's a good young piece who looks like, at only 22 years old, that he's going to have a good future as a foundational piece, at least on the defensive end.
And he's working at the other side, too. We saw him in practice. He's got to get in close and stuff like that. He's a great shooter.
We'll catch a quick break, but coming up next, we'll do more Frank Layden live on site, Richard Smith live on site. Coming up next, Frank Layden, once upon a time, was in a building process to build a team that eventually became very good, and that's what the Jazz are trying to do. So I want to talk about that, but we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan Southtown. It's 11155 South Jordan Gateway. If you've ever wanted to meet the legend himself, Frank Layden, I'm sure he'll take pictures with you, shake hands, and say hello. And, of course, Smitty in addition to that. So more coming up with Frank and Smitty live on site on ESPN 700.
The end is clear. So late. Final day. Friend.
You shake his hand, though.
Way it's clear.
All right, Frank Layden is live on site, as
Come on
is
over
Richard
here.
Smith. We are live today at Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. That was Frank Sinatra and Frank Layden rolling in, singing a little bit of a duet. So Frank is saying hello to a listener. And, of course, if you want to meet Frank, he would love to take a picture with you and say hello. Smitty, how often does this happen? When you're out and about with Coach, dinner, movies, people come up and say hello and want to shake his hand?
Well, we're just, we're fortunate
Okay.
to be able to go out and do things from time to time with them, but we always have to build in, an extra 15 minutes to get from point A to point B,
Yeah.
because it was stop, then you start, and then it's 5 feet, and then you stop, and then it's start, and which we're very honored and humbled to be in that position that people gravitate to coach in such a way that they cherish him and what he's brought, what he means to this community. So,
How does it make you feel, Coach, when people come up and thank you for what you built? Because you really did build something that 50 years later is still bringing people a lot of joy.
I think that it's overrated. I don't think I mean that.
Okay.
I think that I got a lot more out of it than the people did than I gave. I attempted to do the right things, and I hope we reached the people we were trying to reach. I never thought about trying to save communities or that communities should be saved by professional sports or something like that. But let's take, for instance, where we're sitting right now, the Dahle name.
Mm-hmm.
Did they earn that? You sure did. They did it through years of a couple of different businesses.
Yep.
I mean, the clothing business, the car business, or what have you. So what happens is comes trust with that. And long time, people saying over a long time, I believe in those people. They're interested in the community and what they do. For instance, putting on broadcasts like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all should look in our minds as when I get up in the morning, I say, am I going to make this a better place than it was before I got up?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody I see, and I say this because even the players, when we meet, we used to shake hands and say, what can I do for you today? What can I do to help you? And there were little things. We started women's clubs out of our wives of the players who kind of felt like they were left home. The players were getting all the publicity and what have you. Or, we started, I was talking with the Reverend Franz Davis the other day, and how he was in the beginning when we started chapel service, things like that. Pat Williams actually thought I was trying to take advantage. He says he's trying to soften us up, that Christian stuff,
that's right.
I said, wow. But that's it's the way it is. And I think what you do, you go out every day and you do the best you can, and if that works out, that's fine. I thought it was interesting. Vince Lombardi, who I knew, I had lunch with him a couple of times. I was very fortunate to have friends that knew him, and when he was in Washington, I got a chance to see him a couple of times. I was with Niagara. I thought about my own coach. Taps Gallagher was a great college coach. I thought about people who said to me, if you want to be successful, make sure that you're the guy that signs the checks as well as makes the other decisions. Because when things are going to go south, you're going to have problems. So I said, for instance, he said, well, you take Vince Lombardi. He was in total charge. Red Auerbach, in total charge. He coached the team. He was the general manager. And I thought that when we came here. Whitey Herzog, Hall of Fame people who had total control.
And you were coach. You
Well,
wore both hats.
Yes. I tried, but I think the big thing is that you then have a chance. Otherwise, when the heat comes down, people don't like to hear it. They hear it from their neighbors or what have you. Do this, do that. They want to do crazy things. If we I always say it was a funny thing. One thing, that other car deal, Larry Miller, who was a great guy and did a lot of good things. He would come up with great ideas like get the guy from the Knicks, who was the big center of the Knicks that was
Patrick
so good.
Ewing.
Yeah, he said, well, I think we're good. we got Patrick Ewing, we'd have a heck of a team. I said, I think you're right, Coach. All right. Now let's get somebody on the phone and see if we can trade the Mormon Tabernacle Choir for for Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Johnny Wooden said it best. What you do is you have a job to do, you set goals, you have a lesson plan, you get the best players you possibly can, because nobody can win with bad players.
Yeah.
UB Brown might make them a little better, or something, but no one's going to win the championship with them. And then, you say, let's go about it, and it's your plan. You're the General Eisenhower. You're the General MacArthur who says, this is the plan. This is the one we're going to attack with. But I know this. There are certain consistencies. When you guys were talking, wasn't it funny, the three of us, all we were talking about, this gentleman that came over here said, too many three-point shots. We're always talking about offense. But, we know that stability comes with defense.
Mm-hmm.
It's more consistent, So I think you have to think in terms of building a team around a good defensive plan. The points will come, but we have to start by keeping our players on the floor, having them do certain jobs. People think of John Drew as a great player. But forget he was a great offensive rebounder. Not a good one, a great one.
Mm-hmm.
He just went after the ball. And we've always been fortunate to have players that could defend. Mark Eaton, he wasn't a great offensive player, obviously. That was probably our fault because we didn't give him enough chances to get shots. But he had a specific job and he did it well.
Mm-hmm.
He did it he was proud of himself, and eventually he got Defensive Player of the Year a couple of times.
Yeah.
Ricky Green, fastest of them all, could get it to where we had to start our offense. He won us seconds on the shot clock. He could defend a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
And of course later it was John Stockton. And who told me how great John Stockton was? Oh, I heard from the coach up at Jack Gardner and Liddell Lance. They all told me how good he was. McCarthy out at Weaver. They all said how good John Stockton was. But who was the guy who told me he was really good? I don't think I've ever told you this, but the guy who told me he was really good, we were scrimmaging the first night down at Dixie College, all right? And Ricky Green came off the floor and he said, "Oh, Coach, you picked a good one in him."
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Ricky himself.
Yes.
And John was backing Ricky up. Oh, that's interesting.
Coach, that was it. That's funny you mentioned that because I just gave Coach a book today that I found in the bookstore called The Basketball 100.
Okay.
And it's a new book that just came out by David Aldridge
Sure.
and John Hollinger. And it ranks to this date anyway. It just came out a little while ago. The top 100 players in basketball history.
Okay.
And Coach is in there quoted several times, but that anecdote, Coach, and Coach hasn't had a chance to look at it yet, so it's ironic that you mentioned that because that little quip is in the book where they say, Ricky Green, talking about John Stockton, who was in this book, was ranked the number 33 all-time player, and he says, Ricky Green came off and said to Frank Layden, hey, you got a really good one here, Coach, which is
in other words, who was to know better? He was the all-star point guard.
Coming off an all-star season.
And so, you go around and you look, and sometimes ex-players who play may have too great thoughts of what a player should be. It's very hard for them to understand. I would say Ted Williams couldn't coach and stuff because his expectations were too great of the people he coached, because he was the greatest of all. So I think you got to have a plan. You live at the plan, and if it doesn't work, you get a job.
Real job.
And I want go ahead, Smitty.
Spencer, I wanted to interject just a minute because Coach mentioned Hubie Brown. That's how Coach Layden got into the NBA, and few people around here probably know the connection between Coach Layden and Hubie Brown, who's going to do his last and final broadcast coming up in February. And Coach, why don't you take a minute and share with our listeners about your recent conversation with Hubie?
Well, Hubie's had some tough luck. He lost a daughter and a son and a wife, all within a 2-year period. And so it was very rough, And he is a guy who, he really believed in himself. By the way, he's a great baseball player. Better baseball player than he was basketball.
I did not know that. Oh,
yes,
interesting.
he was a good one. And he also was an excellent basketball coach. He had a great memory, tenacious attitude, worked hard. had good observation. He could look at things and quickly make a decision whether this was good or bad or what have you. And he loved to talk sports. And I met him when we were going to Niagara together. We met at the train going up to Niagara first time, to the first day of school. And then we roomed together for 3 or 4 years. Out of the 4 years, played baseball and basketball. And then we went on. He went to coach in high school. I did too, a few years. Then he went to William and Mary, then to Duke, and then from Duke, I guess, to he went to Louisville Colonels and won the championship at the ABA, and then from there to the big leagues, the NBA with the Atlanta Hawks, and I went from high school to small college and eventually back to Niagara, our alma mater. And he told me one time, it was my last game was against Kentucky in the Garden in the NIT, the first round, and he said, hey, I want to see you after the game. So we went out to dinner, of course, and he said, hey, why don't you come with me with the Hawks, get out of the cold weather of Niagara Falls. He said, pro basketball is going to burst in the next few years with the television contracts and everything else. He said, he said, they're going to get this thing done because of Larry O'Brien joining the NBA. He said they're going to sew up this ABA. They're going to take the best cities, and he says it's going to where the money's going to be. The officiating's better. Everything. He went on and on, and so I joined him, and that was it.
And your owner in Atlanta was
the great Ted Turner.
And right on the cusp of the burgeoning cable TV
Yeah,
and all that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
Well, he was one thing Ted Turner said. Television will only survive if we have some X number of live television. And what can I get in live television? We can get some news sources. So he started TNT and the news
CNN.
CNN, and then of course he said baseball.
Yeah.
He owned the baseball team and the basketball team and the hockey team all at the same time, and it was live.
Yeah.
He said, I can sell that.
And still to this day, live TV rights
Yeah.
are what generate the bulk of the revenue.
That's right.
For pro sports.
And his father, he was rich. He's a rich kid, rich but not dumb. He went to Brown. He was an Ivy Leaguer, but his if you ever see billboards lit up and stuff, that was his father's invention, and started years and years ago. They were outdoor salespeople.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where the money came from.
Let's see. We still got about good 15 minutes or so.
Oh, the pile! They're starting to pile out, they're starting to rush the building.
Yeah, we still have a little bit of time because what I wanted to do today, when I found out you were going to be kind enough to join us on site, is talk about what it's like to build a championship contending level team, because you did it once upon a time, and the Jazz are trying to do it now. They're in the very early stages, and as you, Frank and Scott, your son and. As you started adding pieces to build the team that ultimately ended up competing for championships, what's that process like?
It starts with support at the top.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is wealth? I'm not sure. I think the people that own the Jazz are very wealthy. Very wealthy. Are they as wealthy as the people that own the Knicks, the Lakers, or what? I don't know. But they seem to be able to compete. Right? You've got to have support from the top. Right? The authority always begins above. The principal protects the teachers, what have you, in schools, in coaching in college. You got the president and then the athletic directors and the coaches and stuff. You've got to have that support. Once you have that support, then you've got to be able to hire good assistants. You've got to surround yourself. You've got to have good working area. All right. Now, if we're thinking here, just in the time we have a little bit of time left, we seem to have very solid ownership. So far, I haven't heard that they've backed out of doing anything that was going to financially. Now, maybe I don't know what happened when the guy that went to Cleveland and
Mitchell and Gobert,
Mitchell, Gobert, what have you. Maybe the demands were too great. One thing, you don't want the agents to be running your organization.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. But I think you set down the plan. Now, here, if I look at this team, they look like they have an ownership that's willing to move ahead and spend some money. He seems to be very active. They buy a hockey team, they're going to revamp the building. The building's going to be better. And then you see they get Danny Ainge involved. Danny Ainge is no, is a guy that just fell off the turnip truck. He's a veteran. He's a tough guy. He knows the game. All right. He knows what they expect to be a champion. And then they seem to have some good young players. And so I'm assuming if the 200 how many coaches they have? Not 200.
Yeah. I think it's 197 or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I might have had trouble with that. I had trouble, just controlling Katie and Michael and Scotty, having all those things. But someone said, "We're bringing in a shooting coach." I said, "I'm the shooting coach. I don't know more about shooting than anybody else in the world." So anyway, I think that they were off to a right start. Patience is tough.
Yeah.
Competition is tough. All right, and there's a lot to be. They said, and here, this community has grown since when we came here. I was worried that we didn't have the population. We had a very poor arena, the original Salt Palace, and then your dad did a lot to do that. I mean, getting Larry Miller, and eventually getting the Delta Center and stuff like that, and then finding Larry Miller and what have you. But I think they're on the right track. I don't know if there's anything I'd do different. I like the coach, and I think the players like him, and I think he's young. He's going to learn. I hope this thing doesn't burn him out.
Yeah.
Too soon. It
could. A lot of losing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but as long as he hangs in there and he believes in himself and he believes in what he's doing, which I can't adjust. I don't know enough about it. I haven't been to practice.
Right.
Or what their goals are, but I think they put a team that's worth watching. And go to the game, see them play. I seem to enjoy them, So I think they're off to a good start.
Smitty, at what point, because I'm referencing the team that Frank built, and of course Scott and everyone involved with player personnel decisions, there were some really good signs early. I think it was '84 when Frank won Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year, and there was a playoff team, and obviously drafting really well with Thurl and Mark and John and Carl. But at what point, from your vantage point, did they start to really come together where you said, okay, no, we can really play with anybody now?
Well, I remember when during the Karl Malone draft, and that was in '85, and up to then, when the team had moved to Salt Lake, Coach had in succession had drafted Darrell Griffith, Thurl Bailey, Mark Eaton, Bobby Hansen, John Stockton. And then Karl Malone.
That's quite a streak.
Yeah,
of hitting it.
And I remember when during the press conference after the draft, local reporters asking Coach about, hey, Karl Malone, can do this, and he's a good offensive player and can score and whatever. Do you want him to come in and be a scorer? And I remember Coach saying, well, I don't know about scoring. He said we have enough scoring. We have Adrian Dantley. We have Darrell Griffith. We have John Drew coming off the bench as a sixth man. We have Ricky Green, who can score some. We have a developing center, shot blocker, rim protector in Mark Eaton. But we're, I think it was Coach at that time, maybe third from the bottom in the NBA coming off that season in rebounding. Mm-hmm. And I remember Coach saying, we're hoping Karl Malone could come in as a big body defender in the low post, maybe get some rebounds for us, and if he scores 8 or 10 points a game, then that'll be a bonus, and then the 36,000 points later, but the point being that the Jazz at that time in the 80s, under Coach Layden's direction, as both the head coach and the general manager, built it block by block and filled the certain spots you needed to fill as you went along. John Stockton, of course, as coach has said a lot of times in the past, drafted him with the idea that, we think he can be a solid backup, so that's another piece of the puzzle, to Ricky Green.
Or trade him to Portland.
Yeah.
Did they want John?
Yes.
Yeah. They did. Interesting.
Yeah. They tried to trade up.
Yeah, they tried to trade up.
Yeah, to get him, and but then. But the point being those building blocks, and you have to, as Coach said, you have to have the patience to do that. We just saw unfortunately, that we've heard during this last hour that the Sacramento Kings have parted ways with head coach Mike Brown, who they just hired 3 years ago, who was the coach of the year 2 years ago, who they gave an extension to 5 months ago, and now they got a little bump in the road, a little glitch. They've lost 5 in a row, six total in a row at home, and so the natives got a little bit restless there, whatever happened. I don't know if it's front office, the ownership, whatever, but here we are 31 games into the season. They're 13 and 18. They were supposed to be one of the contenders in the Western Conference this year, and so they go ahead and fire the head coach. And so, to Coach's point, you have to have some plan, but then you have to feel confident, as we've talked about before, Spence, confidence in what you believe your plan is, and then having the fortitude to see through that even when you get to those bumps in the road.
And to stick with your decision making.
Yeah.
Don't forget, why did John drop to where he got picked? Where did John get picked?
16.
16. Why was he picked maybe the best point guard in history? Where did Karl Malone get picked?
13.
Yeah. What happened? I said he was falling. I said to Scott at the time, he says, well, we got to take the mailman. I said, well, I think so too, but has he got AIDS and we're the only ones that don't know it? I mean, what's wrong here?
Something,
what
yeah.
do we,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But we stuck with our guns. Those are the guys we wanted. Those are the guys we took, you know. And later on, picking up what's his name from Phoenix,
Jeff Hornacek.
Jeff Hornacek and stuff, and of course we lost Scurry's kid, Scurry's father.
Yep.
Not Scurry.
Del Curry.
Del Curry. Curry's
yeah.
father.
Yeah.
In the expansion draft.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, in the expansion draft. So, you know, we were fortunate, but we always had good guys coming off the bench, big guys. You forget, we brought Rich Kelly back.
That's right.
We had, Bill, what's his name from St. John's?
Billy Pauls.
Billy Pauls, you know,
Yep.
going in and out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking before about the Mike Brown news. I'm going to read you the last 10 Coach of the Year winners. Mike Budenholzer, Atlanta, obviously not there. Steve Kerr, Golden State, still there. Mike D'Antoni, Houston, obviously not there. Dwayne Casey, Toronto, lost his job 2 years later. Mike Budenholzer, Milwaukee, also not there. Nick Nurse, Toronto, not there by his choice to go to Philly. Tom Thibodeau, New York, still there. Monty Williams, Phoenix, not there. Mike Brown, Sacramento, not there. I mean, that's 6 of the past 10 coaches of the year that didn't stay with the teams where they won the award. It's pretty wild, this profession at this point.
Well, and again, Spence, it just speaks to, you know, the whether your top level people, again, whether it's the ownership, whether it's your front office staff, the people who run personnel, however your organization is structured, whoever has the loudest voice or the biggest hammer, you know, do they have the conviction of what they're trying to lay out and get done to see it through, or do they get waylaid at the slightest point of resistance of something not going the way you want it to? You know, with Sacramento, again, don't know their situation there. I just know that there were a lot of expectations for them this year to be a heavyweight in the Western Conference. They stumbled out of the block the first 30 games, and somebody made the decision, well, this isn't working, so we're cutting ties with the guy who, you know, this summer we were celebrating as our longtime coach by giving him an extension.
Yeah.
And whatever has happened the last couple months that's changed that, whether it's just the record or the disappointment in that or what have you. But to Coach's point, you know, you have to have an idea of what it's going to take. You have to have a plan that everybody in the group agrees to and believes makes sense, and then you have to have that conviction to be able to see it through. You know, even when you have tough times, you know, as the Jazz are experiencing now, third worst record in the league, you know, the worst defense in the league, playing a lot of young guys who make a lot of mistakes. Last night I'm watching the game, and Isaiah Collier has the ball up at the top and has an easy pass to a cutting, marking on the baseline. He throws it 5 feet over his head, you know, up into the stands, literally. And you're going, what are we doing? And, you know, but they're willing to, if they're willing to play through those mistakes and understand that they're trying to get their players better, and they believe that some of those guys will be long-term guys. If they can stick with that, then you'll start to see, because you have to have enough of a sample size, Spence, to be able to feel confident that this is working out, or it's not going the way we thought, so now we have to go to plan B.
Yeah, and you have to tell the fans that too.
Yeah.
There has to be, certainly a time when the fans are this is our goal, this is what we're trying to do, but when we hit it, we're going to be very, very good.
Yeah, yeah. Frank, before I set you loose, since you and I last spoke, the Jazz released their 50-year anniversary documentary. And you were heavily featured in that. We spoke to you.
I'm sure heavily.
No, well played, sir. We talked to you right after you recorded the interview, and you went down to the premiere. But I haven't spoken to you since it was released. I love the old stuff. For me, I mean, it brought back a lot of memories. What was that like for you to kind of reminisce a little bit?
It's important because when I came with the Jazz, that's what we didn't have. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a future. We didn't have a past.
Right,
you know?
right.
And so, what we accomplished, I was proud of. We didn't win a championship, but we came close. And I think we lost one year to the Lakers in 7 games.
88.
88, yeah.
That might have been the greatest team in history that we lost to.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Chicago teams and everything, Michael Jordan. Those were exciting times that we were right in the middle of it. And I grew up in Brooklyn. With the Dodgers, our cry was wait till next year. And finally in 1955 or something, we finally won the World Series. But there's nothing wrong with being close, and as long as you play tight and you're honest with the people and you give them an effort, But if you're fooling them and you're trying to fool them and consistently letting them down, then no, it's no good. I don't think that this group has done that. Mm-hmm. I think our coach is going to be all right. He's learning the hard way.
He's bright.
But I think he's a good man, and he seems to be honest, and he's got to work out. He's taking it harder than anybody, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thank you. Go ahead, Smitty, before we say
Coach, I just want to say, let our listeners know, Spence, and for Coach, we're a week away from somebody's 93rd birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
George Washington.
So we wish Coach Layden a very early happy birthday, along with Happy New Year, and thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate your time and all your wisdom and everything.
Well, thank you for asking me. Yeah.
You're welcome anytime, for sure, Frank. It's great to see you.
Yes.
Happy New Year, and we'll do it again soon if that's okay.
Thank you. My best to your family, your friends, and to the Dollies, and hang in there, babe.
For sure. Appreciate it. All right, we got 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Tony Jones and Noah Eagle. That's your 4 o'clock hour. So keep it here on ESPN 700. Well, that's called excellent timing. My goodness. Had to run and take a little break halfway home on the show, and just barely put my headset back on. So if you heard a lot of the Tribe Called Quest bump. Okay, well, it's actually not bad news because at least it's a good bump. So my bad, we're back. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Special thank you to Frank Layden for joining us live on site out here at Tim Daly Nissan. Of course, Richard Smith as well. So good times with Frank and Smitty. Do a little more basketball here, whatever else comes our way with one of our favorites from the Athletic, Tony Jones. On a Friday. Tony, sorry for keeping you waiting there, but at least you got to listen to some Tribe, yeah?
I mean, I was going word for word. Forget the interview.
Okay. No, I know that you were, so I don't feel that bad. But happy.
Listen, I have a hip hop. I have a hip hop thing for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Appreciate that.
Let's hear it.
Did you listen to Redman back in the 90s?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So Redman just came out with an album that dropped Christmas Eve, so 3 days ago.
Okay.
It is fantastic.
Oh, is it really?
I mean, it is fantastic. Please, listen, it sounds just, you know how, Nas or, people who were active in the 90s, they don't quite sound the same, their voices change. They sound different because, obviously age. People are 50 around this point. He sounds exactly the same.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, he's got to be in his mid-50s, but yeah, Method Man and Redman, those two, when they did their thing together, that was some of the best stuff, in the mid to late 90s, back in the day for sure.
And on that album, Method and Redman got a song on there. They have a collab.
Ah, okay.
The entire album is fantastic. KRS-One is on there. Channel Live is on there. Lloyd Underground is on there. Snoop is on there. It is fantastic.
All right, you're speaking my language because I admit I don't know much about the new stuff, but you take me back to the 90s, and I'm all about it, so I'll check it out. Tony, happy Friday, happy post-Christmas, happy holidays. Was Santa good to you this year?
I am Santa.
Oh, Tony, shh. Shh. It's a family-friendly show.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, Santa was good to me. So sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all good. I think we saved that one.
Listen, Santa needs to give me a paycheck. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's get your reaction to the news that broke about 10, 15 minutes ago. After winning Coach of the Year 2 years ago, after getting a 3-year extension 5 months ago, Mike Brown has been fired as the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Tony, what are your thoughts on it?
I think there are a couple of things. From a macro perspective, I do not agree with the firing. Mike was this is a franchise that's missed the playoffs 18 in the last 19 years, and there's a reason for that. And the organizational malpractice that's been going on in Sacramento has gone on for years. It's gone on for decades, and there's a reason why nobody has been able to win on a consistent level since Rick Adams, right? So Mike Brown comes in and he does what Michael Malone doesn't even do, which is he gets the Kings to the playoffs. They have a classic series with the Golden State Warriors. He instills some toughness in them. He instills culture. He demands those guys play defense. And on the other end of the floor, he instills a really functional, really good offense around Sabonis and around De'Aaron Fox. So, he did a great job there. So, to make him the fall guy because Monte McNair did not put a great roster around him for this year, or a roster that makes sense. I just don't think that. I just don't agree with that. Now, that being said, he had a press conference last night after after the game where you listened to that press conference, and it was basically like, I'm out of answers, and kind of begging to be fired. So from a micro perspective, you could see, you could see it coming if you listen to that press conference last night. So it was really, I think it was really unfortunate. And now I look at the Sacramento Kings and I'm like, good luck finding somebody good to take that job if you just fire somebody who less than 24 months ago won Coach of the Year unanimously.
Yep, no, some good thoughts there. And Doug Christie's going to take over on an interim basis. So that's the breaking news in the NBA if you missed it. Also, Tony, we'll do a couple of other just kind of big picture macro storylines. Pat Riley comes out today and says they're not trading Jimmy Butler. And honestly, I think they should. I just think it makes sense. Jimmy, I don't know if it's lack of interest in the regular season. His shot attempts are down around 10.5, 11 per game. He's shooting more free throws, and that's something he does well. But, he's on the books coming up. They've got a decision to make, and, ultimately we'll see if they, if Jimmy hits free agency and what that number looks like, if a team wants to throw big money at him at his advanced age. But the player option is $52.4 million. The reports are he won't pick it up because he does want to get one of those last long-term big contracts like guys do in their mid-30s. So what's your take on Pat Riley saying they're not going to move him? Do you think they should, or do you think they're going to play it out and try to re-sign him when he becomes a free agent?
Well, I mean, I know what Pat Riley said. I mean, but you have to judge by actions and not by words. And the Heat and Jimmy Butler are moving like a team. Like, they are moving as if they are moving apart. Like, Jimmy Butler's not playing this weekend. He's out, due to personal issues. He starts games. He's not finishing games. He's in and out of the lineup. He doesn't look a whole heck of a lot engaged when he's in the lineup. Reports don't come out of anywhere. Occasionally, media gets stuff wrong. Especially, people who aren't there every day. But when it gets to the level of Shams Charania, when it gets to the level of Mark Stein, when it gets to the level of Sam Anick, when it gets to that level, when it gets to Brian Windhurst, when it gets to guys like that,
Tony Jones.
No, I have not reported anything on Jimmy Butler, but thank you so much. But when it gets to that level, it's people aren't making this stuff up. You're getting it from somewhere, and I know that there was the Shams and Bernie Lee thing, with Jimmy's agent, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's just a lot of smoke around and Jimmy and around Miami's willingness to listen to offers for Jimmy, and we still have 6 weeks to the trade deadline, so I just wouldn't take Pat Riley's words at face value there. I think that if somebody came in and gave him a really good offer, I think that he would listen.
Well, and I believe they should. Like, if I was running the Heat, I would try to trade Jimmy Butler. I just think they've kind of, maximized everything that they can do with him as their centerpiece. And he's 35 years old, turning 36. I'm not giving him 3 years, $80, $90 million. They've got some decent, intriguing young pieces. And ultimately, I think the step forward that we've seen this year, Bam's 27, and he's kind of their centerpiece. Tyler Hero is having a phenomenal year. I mean, their two best players are in their 20s, and I don't think you're winning anything special this year. So I think they should move off of him. I just think it makes sense. So give me, in your estimation, knowledge of the league, teams that you think should make aggressive offers and where Jimmy would fit best if they actually do move him.
I think that Philadelphia should not have moved him.
Sure.
And that's where you start, because here's the thing with Jimmy Butler. He is a guy that over time is going to grate on you. And for how good he is, he has worn his welcome out in multiple spots. And, the thing that you have to think about with Jimmy Butler is, right, he's with Eric Spoelstra, he's with Pat Riley, and he's grading on them. And if you grade on those guys, then, that's like, that's the most cultured place in the NBA in terms of in terms of culture over a long period of time. So, you have to put him in a situation where he's got a chance to help you win a championship. And to me, that's Phoenix. And the thing with Jimmy Butler that I think right now is that he still remains, a generational playoff riser until he's not. But he's not the same regular season player as he is a playoff riser. He's like Jamal Murray on steroids, right? Like he's an all-NBA guy in the playoffs, and he's an all-star guy in the regular season when he plays and, when he's engaged. And I don't think that he's engaged right now in Miami, but I think that if you put him in Phoenix or if you put him in Golden State, somewhere like that, I think he would be engaged. But, the upshot of this is I don't think that he's any longer a number one guy. I think he's got to be put in a position where he's a number two or number three guy, especially in the regular season, that can, be a playoff riser come the postseason and, do what he does in the postseason. And to me, that's the Phoenix Suns. So you wrap a package around Bradley Beal. You try to get Bradley to, where there's no trade clause, by hook or crook, and you figure out what kind of compensation package can come along with that, and you try to make the deal. I don't see another place outside of Golden State that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, because you got to put him in a strong culture and in a strong locker room where there's a lot of veterans and where his overwhelming personality doesn't overwhelm the locker room in general. So, I think that Phoenix, or I think that's Golden State.
All right, moving off the Jimmy Butler stuff. Before we get to the Jazz, the Jazz were in Cleveland not too long ago, and so were you. We talked to you when you were in Cleveland. It was snowy. It was cold. It's a city that, if you want to go spend time in Cleveland, you do what you got to do. But you were there for a while, and you were able to catch up with Donovan. And so, I've talked about this quite a bit. There's always been this weird thing with really good Jazz players who go elsewhere. A lot of them don't end up playing very well. A lot of them don't end up showing elsewhere what they showed here, and for a myriad of reasons. Hayward got hurt. I mean, otherwise I think he would have been great in Boston. And Darren was good in New Jersey, but he wasn't near what he was here when he was one of the best league guards in pro basketball for about 4 years. But I said it when they traded him. I said, all right, well, get ready to watch this kid go play really well somewhere. And I wonder what your takeaways were from your conversation with him, and do you feel like he's leveled up? The numbers are roughly the same, but the Cavs are winning at a really high clip. So take us through the piece you wrote and give me your impressions on what Donovan's doing in Cleveland this year.
Well, I think the numbers don't do him justice. I mean, his usage is at a career low. His minutes are at a career low. And, he's developed a level of self-awareness in Cleveland in terms of trusting his teammates that I'm not sure that he had in Utah. The one thing that I took, from our conversation, and, our conversation was hours, not minutes. I think that he's taken a lot of what, Mike Conley tried to drill into him, and Joe Ingles tried to drill into him, and before those guys, Kyle Korver and Derek Favors, those veterans, all took him under his wing, and he's in a position right now where he's 28 years old, and he looks up and he's one of the veterans in the locker room. It's the circle of life. So he's trying to do the same thing with Evan Mobley that Mike Conley and Ricky Rubio did with him. I think that um, his experience with Utah, I think it, kind of, turned him on to, the fact that, there's a basketball mortality in all of us. So I think that, he's um, a lot more appreciative of this Cleveland team than he was necessarily with the 2021 Jazz team. One of the things that he told me was that Mike Conley, went up to him and said, hey, this doesn't happen very often. This is not the NBA. And Donovan Mitchell, you're 23, 24 years old, and you're like, yeah, I can jump out of the gym. My team's the number one team in the Western Conference. This is how it's supposed to be. And, it's not how it's supposed to be. So, the fact that he knows that now, I think that there's a lot more of a sense of urgency with him this year than there was in 2021. And that's, no fault through him through a character thing. It's just, an experience thing and being, 28 years old as opposed to being under 25 years old. So, I think that, there's those things there. I think if I were to vote today, probably knowing that Luka Doncic is not going to qualify for All-NBA, I would vote Donovan Mitchell first team All-NBA as of today. Because I think that he's playing on that level. I think that he's playing better and more patient than he's ever played. And I think that, when you're leading a team that's 26-4, to the victors go the spoils, so to speak. So, I think that he's playing at that kind of level. I think that, if I did the Tim Bontemps MVP straw poll a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure that you've had Tim on and talked about that. But
Sure, yeah. Yep.
I participated in that straw poll, and I voted Donovan fifth. So, I think that he's having, probably by far the best year of his career. And one of the things that I said to him, and we had a laugh about, I was like, this is the first year I've ever seen you play defense, like just sliding your feet. And, he laughed. He kind of laughed it off. But, he was like, yeah, you're right. There's more of an attention to detail at the defensive end. So, from a basketball perspective, he's just a different guy than he was when he was in Utah. And I think from a life perspective, I think that he's kind of evolved into being a more mature human being.
Good stuff. You can find it up on the Athletic website. You can find the links on, Tony's Twitter profile or X or what have you. So, yeah, I think a lot of people will always remember Donovan fondly for the 5 years that he was here. I think a lot of people were mad about the way it ended. One more thing here. Did you get the sense at all that Donovan has moved past the uncomfortable feelings that seem to be here at the very end in Salt Lake?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know that part is all him. I think that his situation in Cleveland, the fact that it turned out so positively, I think that helped him move on. I think that there was. I think that within the organization, I think that he's moved on. I think he's very appreciative of the teammates that he's played with in Utah. I think that part is really accurate, and but I think that he's kind of moved on mentally from the uncomfortable parts, and and I think that there was just a lot of stuff at play that I think would probably not lead him to ever like he's never going to call Utah home, or I don't think that in his Hall of Fame speech, if he makes the Hall of Fame, I don't think that he's ever going to thank Utah or the Utah Jazz. I think he'll thank the teammates that he played with. But I do think that he's kind of mentally and emotionally moved on and removed himself from the situation.
All right, before I say you lose, just give me your take on where we're at with the Jazz. Last night's game, against the Blazers. Had some real high-level shot making at the end from both teams. I mean, it was fun. They were going back and forth, and admittedly, I think the Jazz have been a little bit better as of late, but we all know what time it is, right? So before I set you loose, Tone, on a Friday, your thoughts on the process that is the Utah Jazz?
Man, I like watching them play, which is a real compliment to them and a real compliment to Will Hardy. Like, it's not a chore for me to watch them play basketball. And, and I see a vision where, I think that, you kind of bottom out this year and do what you can to bottom out next year. And I think that, if this goes right, I think that, they can get back to respectability and beyond, rather quickly. So, what I would tell, Utah Jazz fans is, this year and possibly next year are more of a speed bump than the norm. I think that you can see the young guys, developing. Like, last night, I really liked the floor game that Isaiah Collier played. He had near triple double. Obviously, Lowry made some really tough shots down the stretch. And, I really, really, really love the development of Walker Kessler. I think that he's just been a different guy this year than he was last year from a positive perspective. And, and I think that he's a guy that the Jazz can build around, which is a good thing because this year was important from a perspective that they needed to figure out if they wanted to pay him because he's eligible for a rookie extension this summer. So, I think that there's a lot of good things going on, and I think that the best thing that I can say about them is that they're kind of struggling to lose at the level that they need to lose. And there was a lot of consternation on Twitter, like, "Hey, we need to lose this game," when it looked like, in fact, that the Jazz were going to win that game last night. So, it's a lot of moving parts with the Jazz. Now we're kind of getting into trade season, so we're going to see. We're heading into January, but we'll see what this roster looks like in 5 to 6 weeks, and it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes down.
All right, my guy. Well, I appreciate the time. If I don't see you or talk to you, have a great New Year's. Keep up the great work, man. We'll chat soon, okay?
Yes, sir. I appreciate you as always, my dog.
All right, Tony Jones from The Athletic does a great job covering the Jazz and the NBA. Get him on Twitter at TJones on the NBA. You can find the link to that piece he wrote about Donovan. Good stuff if you want to check that out. All right, we got to catch a break. The rising star in the world of sports broadcasting, Noah Eagle, joins us coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, rolling along on a Friday afternoon. Fun, lively show so far. Happy Friday to you. Got some college football on the station tomorrow. We'll let you know what the schedule is. And then, of course, pro football all weekend long. We are your home of the NFL in this market. Let's welcome in our next guest. My goodness gracious. Did a few people watch Noah Eagle broadcast the game on Netflix? I read that the peak number was 27 million. As Noah was able to call that Ravens-Texans game and good enough to give us some time on a Friday. Noah, happy Friday, man. How you doing?
Spence, appreciate it, man. My question is, what percentage of that number was just tuning in for Beyonce at halftime? That's the real question.
You know, I know you're asking that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the thing is, the NFL has just done such a phenomenal job at creating this television product that the Beyonce thing is not nothing because your sister wants to watch Beyonce. The family sits there and watches the whole broadcast start to finish. And of course, you know, the game wasn't what we all hoped it would be, but what's your take on simply the television event that pro football has created that captures millions and millions of people every weekend?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, and I mean, it helps when you have a performer of Beyonce's caliber. Right? It's one thing to get a halftime show, and we've seen that certainly at sporting events where it's good and, you know, it's, hey, it was a fun little experience. But when it's memorable and long-lasting at that level and one of the supreme stars in the music world and one of the just elite performers, that's when it takes it to a different level. So a really impressive job by the NFL. Obviously, having the Taylor Swift effect as well the last 2 years has only helped that as well. So cool to see it up close and personal, and certainly cool to watch that performance because she did crush it.
Well, and cool to see your star continue to rise, young man. And I know you don't want to talk about yourself, and I get it, but I do. Every time I have you on, it feels like it's on the heels of this great event where you just go, you show up, and you do your thing. Last time we talked to you right after the Team USA Olympic gold medal game in Paris. And now we're talking to you after this this streaming broadcast on Netflix that has brought you a ton of new fans and new attention, including a piece in the athletic stratosphere and elsewhere. Awful Announcing is calling you the future of NFL broadcasting. I got to know, Noah, what's this like as you continue to rise in this business and gain new admirers every time you go to work?
Yeah, I mean, Spence, you know, like, we don't do this for that necessarily, but it's always nice to be recognized and always nice to be recognized in a positive way. So you take that as a win, but, you know, my goal, I know your goal, and really anybody who's really serious about this is to always just be better and find ways to continue to improve the craft, find ways to continue to challenge ourselves. And I thought that's what this really was. It was a new challenge with a brand new crew for me, and working with Greg Olson, who is clearly one of the best in the business. He's so good at the job. He's such a tuned-in NFL and really football mind. He was like a football savant. And being around him, it just made me smarter about the game in a lot of ways, just being around him for a couple of days. And so working with them and just being around is really awesome. I love the NFL. I love the league growing up. It was definitely one of my main passions within sports. So anytime I get a chance to do an NFL game in any capacity, whether that's been in these alternate broadcasts or the last couple of years now doing some real ones, it's always a pleasure. And so this was no different than that.
I will follow up, and I will actually see your hand and raise you and let you know that I think Greg is the best. I think he is the best analyst in the business. I felt like it was kind of a rough deal for him to lose his gig, but I guess you do that for Tom Brady. I get it. I understand why that's the decision. But I truly, Noah, think Greg Olson is the best analyst in television. So what was that like for you to see the way he preps, see the way he goes about his business, and what would you say the key was to the synergy between the two of you?
Yeah, so the first part is really the main part, the prep aspect of it. And I think anybody who does this has their own way of preparing. We all do. I think that's what makes this job so unique is there's not just a singular way to go about it. But Greg, similar to Todd Blackledge, who I work with on college, they're both sons of coaches. And I do think that there's something to be said about being the son of a football coach and then going into this eventually and working in it. You were just kind of ingrained in the football world. So Greg and Todd both are great examples of people who eat, breathe, sleep, and everything in between football. And the passion, I think, is what comes through. And that's what I noticed with Greg is just how passionate the guy is about the game, about the matchup, about the intricacies, and specifically about bringing different perspective than what you typically hear on a broadcast. His whole mentality coming into the broadcast was, how can we set this up in a different way than what everybody else does? So, for example, we've all heard people talk about John Harbaugh and his long tenure and all of the wins and the Super Bowl and everything. We've heard all that before. Said, what's an angle we can take that we haven't heard a lot or at all potentially? And so he talked about the development of coaching staff and coaches becoming coordinators and head coach, but the way that he goes about building that, the way that he goes about continuing to churn that out and finding an eye for talent. I thought that was very interesting because it is a perspective you don't get a lot. And so I think that's what probably separates him. But in terms of his actual preparation, it's off the charts. The one thing he did, he came into our production meeting night before the game, and he said, guys, I just asked, can you just let me brain dump? And I said, yeah, sure. Go for it. Dump away, which sounds weird out of context, but it is context. It's great. And so he just went for 32 minutes straight with everything he saw for this game. And it made my life very easy because now I know exactly what he wants to talk about, exactly how he wants to talk about it. And I think that's what allowed for us to have a pretty good chemistry pretty quickly.
So even though the numbers were massive, neither game really delivered anything close. When it came to the actual competition and matchup, they both were kind of blowouts. But I wanted to ask you, and look, Lamar is just so fun to watch, and the Ravens are really, really entertaining in and of themselves. I'm not sure what has really gone south with the Texans, but when it's 31-2 and the game really isn't very close, how does that change the dynamic of what you guys have to do to keep the audience engaged?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a bummer. You wish for all-time classics all the time, and I was on the call for the Chiefs-Texans game on Saturday, which ended up being pretty competitive, and it wasn't necessarily all fireworks and going down to the very, very end, but it was a one-possession game, as the Chiefs typically play. Texans played hard, and the Chiefs' defense came up with plays. Chiefs' offense stayed on the field. It was one of those. So you don't have to go deep into the arsenal to find ways to keep people engaged, to your point. I'd say a couple things that play for this game. One, it helped, as mentioned, that we did have a marquee halftime show. So people through the first half at minimum are locked in, waiting for that. And even now out of halftime, they're still buzzing to a certain degree from what they saw. The second part is you still have just an otherworldly talent, Lamar Jackson. And at any moment, something crazy can happen when you've got someone like that on the field, which is what we saw. He made a couple superhuman plays, including the long touchdown run, the one where he extends the play and finds Isaiah Likely in the end zone, the deep ball that eventually, or catch and run really, with Mark Andrews down the sideline. So those are fun. They're explosive plays, highlights. But for us, I think it goes back to the brain dump from Greg. He had so much information on so many levels about the game and the intricacies and the playoff picture and what both teams look like moving forward. And I think you just rely on that and you find different ways to bring it up, different conversations to have about it, and really try to just figure it all out. The reason that we do all the preparation we do before the game, I say that when a game is pretty normal, like that Chiefs-Texans game Saturday, probably used about 30% of what we prepared ahead of time because the game was good enough. You follow the game. If the game's an incredible game, an all-time classic, you're probably using closer to 15%. We had Oregon-Ohio State, 1-point game, came down to the last play. Probably used about 15% of what we had prepared for that game. But when it's something like this, I'd say you're using about 50%. So if there was a whole nother quarter and a whole nother half, we would have had more than enough information to fill that as well.
Did it feel any different being on Netflix, being on a streaming service kind of exclusively? I mean, a lot was made about the historic day because of this new partnership. And from a watcher's perspective, there are a few subtle nuances. But from a broadcaster's perspective, did it feel different that you were on Netflix?
No, it felt like another day at the office.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it was another fun game, and standalone games are always fun because you've got eyeballs on you. But in terms of the actual mechanics, it all felt very normal, which obviously helps us a lot.
All right. So moving off this dynamic, I do want to stay in the broadcasting space, though, because, and I'll just ask you before I dig into the question, do you know what the NBA situation is for you this upcoming season?
You're saying next season?
Oh, can you even go there?
Listen, I can allude. I wouldn't say I can confirm nor deny anything. Let's put it that way.
Allude away, young man. Allude away.
I'd say, yeah, things would be looking very positive, let's say. And NBC is obviously very excited to have the NBA coming back. It's a return for many people to what they grew up on and round ball rock and everything that Michael Jordan brought and all the highlights. And so the hope is that that continues. And look, I think the NBA still proved on Christmas Day that the product can still be awesome. And especially, I know that LeBron and Steph and KD and some of the older era, so to speak, is kind of on its way out. But I think we've got some fantastic stars in the league, and Victor Wembanyama is going to be a force for the next 15 years. The fact that this is the worst version of him that we're going to potentially get for the next decade and a half is a scary thought for the rest of the NBA. So exciting times at NBC for me personally, and certainly for the league as well.
I love it. So here's what I wanted to ask. Now, the debate about why ratings are down is getting a little out of control. And I watch a lot of NBA basketball, like I watch a lot of NFL and college football. And I can tell when somebody is chiming in on the debate that it just isn't watching the NBA,
right,
because they just have some things to say that are utterly untrue. But the numbers are the numbers. And for context, when it comes to linear television, there are just a lot of people who have cut the cord entirely, and everything is down, including the NFL. Now, the NFL is down incrementally, and the NBA is down quite a bit. But as you look forward to this future partnership, you referenced LeBron. He's turning 40 on Monday. Steph is 36, and Durant's up there as well. We are in this weird kind of phase where people are wondering who the next marketable stars are in pro basketball. You referenced Wembanyama, but how do you feel like the NBA is positioned for the next step in the growth of the game in the league as you guys are about to partner?
Yeah, so Spence, it's so interesting because I do feel like this is true with any league, but especially the NBA for whatever reason, that it's so cyclical. And I think that, let's think back to when Michael Jordan retired the first time the second time in 1998 after his second three-peat. I think, first of all, there was a lockout, so that obviously changes dynamics. But the NBA was in a position at that point where it's like, okay, where do we go from here? And the ratings took a significant dip. And for the next couple years, you had Shaq and Kobe, which kind of provided a little bit of spark. But then a little bit after that, another lull. Jordan comes back, a little bit of a spark. But it took until LeBron's really third year for the ratings to bounce back up to what they were expecting them to be. So that's a little bit of a lull. And then LeBron has carried it all the way through from there. But even before all of that, you had Magic Bird and everything. So it really is just dependent on timing, circumstance, star power. And you have to wait to see who the audience gravitates towards. I think a great example is what's happening on the women's side of things with Caitlin Clark. The audience gravitates towards her. She draws eyeballs, and so the ratings are going to be consistently and significantly high when she's playing basketball. It's just how it is right now. So the NBA, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's a matter of when that person resonates. And it might be Victor Wembanyama as he starts to play more significant games. I think that's the one part that people aren't recognizing. Christmas Day was one of the first significant games he played in terms of what it means in standing for his team, fighting for a playoff spot now this season, going up against another marquee big man in Karl Anthony Towns. And he performed at the highest level on the highest stage at the world's most famous arena. Like, that's important to me. That's important to the fan. I do also think that it's hard to judge right now this season, and I understand you're comparing it to previous seasons, but with the NFL going on, it's a direct competitor. And obviously the NFL has now infiltrated Christmas Day. They have kind of taken it so that they get in the way in some respects. So the NBA, I think, is going to be just fine. You have to give it time, and you just don't know who's going to stick. Maybe Cooper Flagg enters the NBA, and it's the next big thing that everybody loves. Maybe it's A.J. DeBanza the year after that. But I don't know who it's going to be. Nobody does. But at some point, somebody is going to hit, and everybody is going to flop. It's just how it goes.
You reference A.J. DeBanza. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you for your reaction that he will be playing basketball for 5 months. Let's be clear. I mean, he said it himself. He and his father on First Take. They're one and done, but he's playing his college ball in Provo at Brigham Young. What was your reaction, Noah, when you heard that news?
Yeah, I think everybody was at least a little surprised at first, but then you start kind of connecting the pieces, and obviously in this NIL era, it's going to be a lot about both opportunity and what places can offer you. And I think that he sees they've got a bona fide potential top 10 pick there right now, so it's obviously possible that someone can go to BYU and be drafted very highly. I also think that he valued the pro-style Kevin Young teachings, which also very important. A guy who's been in the NBA for a long time, knows what it takes. And then obviously connections with NBA personnel over in Salt Lake City with the Utah Jazz that you just never know how it all develops. So I just think that it's a good situation. He can go, he can star. He doesn't have to necessarily have a ton of pressure to go and win a national championship, but he has pressure to go and perform at a high level, which I think he'll be ready to do. But exciting, obviously, for the area, and I'll be curious to watch how it all develops.
So we're a big college football market around here in the Big 12 footprint, and in addition to the many other things that you do college football as well. And I'm just curious to get your take on the state of this product and this game that we all love. I mean, it is second. The numbers tell us that it's the second most popular product to pro football. And it's a sport and a product that we all love out here and people nationwide love to watch. And even though it's in a little bit of chaos off the field, the ratings are still there. The attention is still there. The eyes are still there. But they do have free agency, Noah, during the year. I mean, there are mass exodus of players leaving teams that are still playing. BYU is playing Colorado tomorrow. They've got 11 kids in the portal. Teams that are in the CFP race have kids in the portal. Are you concerned about the future of college football, and what do you think is next off the field to kind of get this product back to being on track where we need it to be?
Concerned, no. I would say that the one thing that you just brought up is absolutely the biggest issue right now, which is if your team is still playing postseason, there's got to be something in terms of the portal that we got to fix, because I think the worst example of this is a team that's competing, has already won their first college football playoff game, and that's Penn State. Bo Prabula, their backup quarterback, who was heavily featured. They have many packages for him. Over the course of the regular season, he played in every game. He was a massive impact player. In fact, he played the entire second half against Wisconsin when Drew Aller got hurt and was honestly brilliant. And so he enters the portal. He gets a very impressive deal from Missouri. He's already committed there. But he can't play? You're telling me he can't finish the job for this team? And that would be my concern is now Penn State gets in a bind. Either, God forbid, Drew Aller gets hurt, or they need him in one of these packages they've run. They need him for a gadget play. He's a dual-threat guy who can do a lot, and they're in a tight situation in the red zone. They need to punch it in, and they don't have him now, and they've had him all season. They've gotten to this point. That, to me, feels wrong. So that would be the one area that I think they're going to look at. But in terms of the product itself, it's still very good. I think we still had a number of fun games. Obviously, these new conferences. Todd Blackwood told me before the year, and I think he's right, that this was going to be one of the most wacky and memorable college football seasons in recent memory because of the novelty of it. Just think about what we've seen with the new conferences, some great matchups, the new 12-team playoff. We saw a two-way player win the Heisman. It was a wacky season in so many ways, but it was also entertaining, and I think it did bring in the ratings. And so that will tell you all you need to know in terms of where the sport is. I'll be definitely tuned in for these last couple of rounds of the CFP. Can Oregon finish off the first ever, to be 16-0 season? That's going to be fascinating. Are they going to get past Ohio State for the second time? Can Notre Dame overcome the loss of arguably their most impactful player, Riley Mills, to beat a Georgia team playing without their starting quarterback? Can Texas find a way to figure out which quarterback gets them the best chance to win over the course of a singular game for the entire rest of the way? So there's a lot of storylines that I'm looking forward to, and I know there was a lot of discussion about who should have been in, who shouldn't have been. I think that the first round really showed us that home field advantage matters a lot. And for these teams, they're all very good. They're all worthy of getting in, but especially those home teams, those are some of the best teams in the entire country, and they proved it in that first round.
All right, before I set you loose, who do you think is the last team standing? We were talking about this earlier with a college football guest from ESPN, Kyle Bonagura. And it's weird because I feel like, for me, there are moments where I think Texas might be the best team in the country. And Ohio State, watching them, what they do to Tennessee, it's like they might be the best team left. Oregon's had the best regular season. Georgia is Georgia. And, you outline some of the storylines with some of the underdogs, and, we'll see what happens with Penn State, Boise State. But if I asked you, and I don't know how many of these teams you've seen live or called games, who do you think the best team in the country is this year?
So of the teams remaining now, I've seen Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame all live.
Okay.
I could make an argument for all four of those teams to be the last team standing. I would say that you mentioned Ohio State. In terms of just sheer talent on the roster, they are the most talented team in the country, bar none. Just straight talent. If you looked at paper and said, who's the best team, it's them. They have the most expensive roster, the most expensive coaching staff, and the talent should kind of reflect that, which it does. I mean, Will Howard, I think a lot of people have given him a lot of stuff through the year, and I think he's a lot better than people have probably given him credit for. The two running backs are outstanding. Jeremiah Smith might be the best player in all of college football. He probably would have been the number one pick if he could leave after his freshman year in college. He's that good. You've got Emeka Buka as a first-round wide receiver. Carnell Tate is an NFL wide receiver. You've got tight ends who are, not as good maybe as what they had last year with Cade Stover, but still impactful. A guy like G. Scott knows exactly what to do. Their biggest concern is offensive line, and they've had some injuries there. But even with that, they're still the most talented team. I'm just going to go based on what quarterback I trust the most, and that's really where my head's kind of been leading me right now, because I just look at all the teams. It's not a separating factor, or at least not a huge separating factor. And so, to me, it's, okay, which quarterback do I trust to make the right play in the big moment in the fourth quarter? Like, that, to me, is probably the biggest concern with a team like Notre Dame. Their running game is elite. Their defense is elite. Riley Leonard's good. He's a good quarterback. The problem is you get to a 4th and 8, game on the line, fourth quarter. Do you trust them to fit it into a tight window and move the sticks, keep the drive alive? The one guy I trust of all the guys here is Dylan Gabriel, because we've seen him do it all year. We've seen him do it over his career. We've seen him do it in hostile environments. And I would just go with what my eyes tell me, that he's the most trustworthy of all the remaining quarterbacks. So I don't – it's not me saying, like, Oregon's going to win. It's just me saying that if I have to at least get behind one of the QBs, he's the one I would.
All right, dude. What's the one event? What's the one box you want checked? Because if you're not careful, you're going to check all the boxes that broadcasters want to check before you're 30. But is there one thing that you just badly want to do? One event you want to call before you hang it up?
The Westminster Dog Show.
There we go.
Number one.
There we go.
I don't know, Spence. I think that a lot of why I've enjoyed everything so far has just been because it's been a challenge. My goal every year is to do something I didn't do the year before. And so if I can keep doing that, then, I'll check a lot of those boxes, and it'll also mean that I've challenged myself each different season. So I look forward to that, whatever it is. Just bring it on.
All right, buddy. Well, it's like I say every time you join us, it's been fun to watch this star rise. So keep up the excellent work. Happy holidays to you and yours, and we'll do it again soon, okay?
You got it, man. Appreciate it.
All right, the great Noah Eagle, who had an incredible call for the Ravens game, the Ravens-Texans game, which didn't turn out to be a great game, but he and Greg Olson killed it. And, there are a bunch of articles about him being the future of NFL broadcasting. He's 28 years old. He's done the Olympics. He's about to do a little NBA on NBC. He does Big Ten college football, and it's pretty remarkable to see his star rise. He started hopping on our show about 5.5 years ago, and over that time, he has really evolved into one of the best broadcasters in the business. Very, very cool stuff. So happy for him. Comes from great stock. We are live today at Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. The address is 11155 South Jordan Gateway. The easiest thing to do is just put Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown in your GPS and follow it out. It's their best deals of the year. It's their closeout sale right now. Up to $7,000 off a new 2024 Rogue. 2025 Rogue is now in stock as well. Up to $9,200 off their 2024 Pathfinders. They've got new 2024 Kicks and Sentras for as low as $19.99. The all-new 2025 AWD Kicks are in stock. It's a special APR right now, as low as 0%. Available on all models. Get a new Aria or a new Leaf for less monthly than a used Tesla. And speaking of Teslas, they have over 40 Teslas in stock and over 70 EVs in total available right now. You can pre-order all new 2025 Armadas. And Muranos are available as well. So good stuff out here. I always appreciate them having us out. Happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it weekend time. And the 5 o'clock hour of the program is next. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we are live today. Having a good time. It's been a fun show. Come on out and say hi. We're here for another hour or so. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. We're live at Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. It's 11155 South Jordan Gateway. Come on by and say hi. It's their year-end sale. They're doing their clearance sale for the end of the year now. And you can get the best deals all year, up to $7,000 off new Rogues, up to $9,200 off new Pathfinders. You can pre-order as well. You can check out more information on their website or come on by to Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown, a bunch of Tim Dahle locations across the valley, and they're all doing their sale right now for the end of the year. All right, time now to give away some Utah basketball tickets. Text Utes right now to 33986 to enter for Utah men's basketball tickets. So that's 33986 right now. That's the number, and text Utes to that number for your chance to win some Utah basketball tickets. We've had a fun show so far. Started things off today with Kyle Bonagura to do a little college football in the program. Kyle covers college football for ESPN. And in case you missed it, he was in town not too long ago and spent some time with Jay Hill and spent some time with the BYU coaching staff to do a story on their pretty remarkable season that will come to a conclusion tomorrow against Colorado. So if you don't follow Kyle on social media, definitely check it out and stay tuned for that story that's going to drop over the next couple of days. So appreciate Kyle's time. Moved over to Richard Smith and Frank Layden live on site. Man, if you missed that, always good stuff to get Coach here. Hanging in there. He's got a birthday coming up in about a week or so. He's turning 93. So a very happy birthday to Coach Layden, and a very big thank you for him joining us today live on site on this cold, chilly, rainy Friday afternoon. So drive safe out there and keep it right here on your commute home around Salt Lake, as it is the Drive at 5, and we'll keep you company as you're making your way across the landscape of the state, headed home, maybe doing your commute, maybe running some errands. Happy holiday season to you. We also caught up with Tony Jones earlier. Tony did a piece on Donovan Mitchell. And, Donovan, I think, will always be a little bit of a hot-button topic around here. I think there are a lot of people that appreciate what he did here, a lot of people bummed about the way it ended. Donovan has found his way to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and when the Jazz were in Cleveland not too long ago to play the Cavs, it was a fun game, pretty competitive game. Tony was there, and he sat down with Donovan Mitchell for a piece he did with the Athletics, so definitely check that out. Speaking of the Jazz, they took on the Portland Trail Blazers last night, and I thought it was a really fun, entertaining matchup. Tony and I were talking about this earlier. When the Jazz are fully healthy, and they weren't last night, they were without John Collins and Keontae George, but they had Larry Markkinen, Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton. Isaiah Collier got the start, played 35 minutes. There was some real high-level shot-making in that game down the stretch, some real back-and-forth stuff. Now, neither of these teams are doing anything special this year. At this point, the Jazz are 7-22. The Blazers are 10-20. Both teams kind of jockeying for lottery position, add some good young talent to some intriguing young talent on the Blazer side of things. Shaedon Sharpe's a really talented young athlete. He had 27 last night. Anthony Simons, a lot of people high on him. Denny Avdija had a career-high 27 last night, but it was Scoot Henderson, who once upon a time was in the mix to be potentially the number one pick back in 2023. It hasn't been a great start to his career, but he hit the game-winning jumper last night, also had 10 assists for the Blazers. And the Jazz hung in there. I mean, they had a lead down the stretch, but defensively they were a sieve in the fourth. They allowed Portland 41 points, and the Blazers go get the win, but I'm fine with it. As you know, the Jazz will finally be back in town coming up tomorrow against the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the problem with that matchup is you simply don't know who's going to be here. Will Joel Embiid actually make the trip to Salt Lake? What about Paul George? When the 76ers are whole and healthy and playing well, it feels like they should have something to say in the Eastern Conference along with the Celtics, but Embiid in and out of the lineup. He is not on the injury report as of now. And Paul George has straight up not showed up to play at times. He also has some injuries. We should be clear about that. As of right now for the Jazz, Jordan Clarkson is day-to-day, as is John Collins, Keontae George. Of course, Taylor Hendricks out for the year with that horrible leg injury. So some Jazz basketball. We've been talking on the show today with all of our guests about the juxtaposition that pro basketball finds itself in with the NFL. The NFL clearly is intentionally impeding on pro basketball's turf, as they're now playing on Christmas Day, and they've got 3 games on Saturday. And, the NFL can put a game on Tuesday at 3 a.m. and it would pull big numbers. But I thought Christmas Day was kind of a reintroductory day for pro basketball into the consciousness of sports fans because the slate was really good. And the NBA's always been really good about putting their more marketable teams in bigger markets and young stars, older stars on the Christmas Day slate in order to kind of get momentum that day, because as the NFL starts to fade away, and there's still a few weeks left, and obviously NFL playoff football is an insanely exciting product, NBA is trying to do what they can to keep up, so at least when football on the college and pro level actually goes away, maybe the ratings will start to get back to where the NBA is accustomed to. But the 76ers beat the Celtics on Christmas Day, and that was a great game. 118-114. We saw Wembanyama go for 42 at MSG. And then obviously anytime Steph and LeBron play against each other, and they typically play against each other on Christmas Day, you're going to see a fun show. So that's what you saw. And then a good game at night with the Suns and the Nuggets. So NBA basketball is starting to kind of permeate its way throughout the consciousness of the general sporting public as opposed to just basketball fans who will watch no matter what. It's a pretty fun night of NBA basketball tonight, even though the Jazz are not involved. Pacers are playing the Celtics. The Pacers have been a little bit better as of late, although SGA dropped 45 on them last night. Good one out west, the T-Wolves and the Rockets. You can guarantee that the fists will be flying in that game. Two teams don't like each other. You got Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers in Denver to take on the Nuggets, Mavericks, Suns, and Warriors, Clippers. So really, really good, actually, NBA action tonight. The Jazz are back at it tomorrow. College football bowl season rolls along. Right now, Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech are in a delay, but Vandy has a 35-13 lead. It's been a number of years since Vandy actually won a bowl game. Arkansas and Texas Tech just kicked off. That's your AutoZone Liberty Bowl, and that game is scoreless in the first. You're going to see Syracuse and Wazoo tonight. That's on Fox with Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson, Jenny Taft. SC in action tonight. Former Pac-12 foe of the University of Utah. This is at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. They're playing a good Texas A&M team. That's the Vegas Bowl. Both Utah and BYU familiar with the Vegas Bowl. Navy beat Oklahoma earlier today. It was an awesome game. Oklahoma went for 2, and Navy was able to stop them at the goal line to move on and win that game. That was the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. But, of course, around here, looking forward to tomorrow. So, interesting to consider what's at stake for BYU tomorrow. I mean, nothing really that's real, right? I mean, if you're not in a CFP bowl game, ultimately there's not a lot on the line for you. But as far as to consider what this win could mean for BYU, I think it would put them among, I'm not going to say the best BYU teams of all time, but maybe one of the top 10 seasons in BYU history, juxtaposed with the preseason expectations and how little most people thought of what BYU would be this year. You know, I made a statement on air a couple weeks back and heard from some people about it, and I don't think I was wrong about this. I really feel like this is probably the worst season that Utah football has had under Coach Whitt, and I honestly think he would admit that himself, and certainly it's not all on Kyle. Most of it certainly is not. Remember, we're 2 years removed from Kyle Whittingham coaching that skeleton crew to 8 wins. I mean, the team 2 years ago had as many, if not more, injuries as Utah football did this year, and Kyle coached them to 8 wins. It was one of his best coaching jobs. I kind of drew the parallel to that season where Jerry Sloan brought that ragtag group of Jazz players after John and Carl took off to a 500 record when I think the over-under was like 9 in Vegas. And Jerry never won Coach of the Year, which is a crime still to this day. But, you know, when you have John Stockton and Karl Malone playing at peak levels, people expect you to win 50-plus games and go to the playoffs. But that year for Kyle, where he got them to 8 wins, felt like a yeoman's effort. And we're only 2 years removed from a Rose Bowl, 2 years removed from back-to-back Rose Bowls and back-to-back Pac-12 championships. So because Utah was thought to be the favorite in the Big 12 by both Vegas and the media, and ultimately we all know what happened. We all know that the injury under center, set them back, and the injury results were set them back as well. Nobody saw this losing streak coming. Nobody saw Utah finishing 2-7 in conference and 5-7 overall, and a roster that had that much talent on it, a coaching staff that had that much experience on it, stumbled to nearly being one of the worst teams. Well, not nearly, being one of the worst teams in the Big 12. So when you talk about preseason expectations and then dig into actual results, yeah, I think this was the worst year that Utah football's had under Kyle. And I have confidence that they'll bounce back. Some portal news came down a little bit earlier today, combined with last night. When we signed off last night, the news broke that a few minutes after that, Otto Tia, who's a wide receiver from Utah State, announced his intent to leave Utah State and Logan to come down to Salt Lake and play for the University of Utah. He's a wide receiver with good size, 6'4", 220. Actually had a good game against Utah football this year. But that came down last night. And then what came down a little bit earlier today is that Tayshawn Lyons is now back in the transfer portal from the University of Utah. He's a wide receiver. He put his name in the portal not too long ago. And then really within a number of hours announced that he was coming back to the University of Utah. And now he has decided to go back in the portal. So nothing official as of right now as far as where Tayshawn Lyons is going to end up, but he has entered the transfer portal. That came down, and also want to be very clear that no news has come down on Keanu Tanavasa, the talented defensive lineman who entered the portal not too long ago. So that's the latest when it comes to the situation with Utah football. Now for BYU football, I want to get back to this before we catch a break. And tomorrow, a couple of things at stake. You know, number one, as I referenced, you win. That's an 11-win season, 7-2 in conference, but that would be your 8th win against the conference team. It's not a Big 12 game. It's a bowl game, but it's a conference foe. And just out of genuine curiosity, wondering how they stack up against a really good Colorado team, because even though they're Big 12 peers, we did not see these two teams play this year. Colorado, a 3.5-point favorite. Now, on the other side, if you lose the game and you're Brigham Young, that essentially means that you really blew it down the stretch. As I've talked about, a lot of parallels between both Utah and BYU in very different ways. They both kind of blew it this year, if we're honest, right? Utah had a chance as the Big 12 favorite to maybe win the conference and go to the CFP, and then Brigham Young installed themselves as the favorite after a 9-0 start. So you have this interesting situation with two sides of the equation where BYU wins tomorrow. You beat a really good team, a very well-coached team with the Heisman Trophy winner and potentially the first quarterback selected in the NFL draft. It's either going to be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And a bevy of talent on the offensive side of the football, as we talked about earlier with all those wideouts. It's not just Travis Hunter. Shedeur Sanders has 4 or 5 targets that he loves to find. So, curious to see what it looks like. Chase Roberts announced his intent to come back to BYU. Are we going to see Chase Roberts, Travis Hunter matched up on each other, which, of course, would be exciting? This game will bring a big number. I don't know what the number is going to be, but I think it's going to be a big number. I wonder if it would approach 7-8 million people, because BYU is a massive brand, and everybody loves to watch Coach Prime's team. Colorado, even though they're not in the SEC or the Big Ten, it's one of the reasons why they're a valuable Big 12 partner, because they bring eyeballs. They're one of the highest watched teams in all of college football. So it's really the only local game, bowl game of any interest. Of course, the CFP will get rolling in the quarterfinal action coming up next week. But BYU Colorado tomorrow should be a fun one. If there's any update on the Utah side of things with the transfer portal, we'll bring it to you. And, yeah, not a ton at stake that's tangible, but as far as the way this team will be remembered tomorrow with BYU and colored in the context of historical BYU football, I think a win, 11-2, year 2 in the Big 12. Remember, it's a P4 football team now. You know, some of the great teams they had back in the day, it was WAC, it was Mountain West, Independent. This is a different thing. What Kalani's done should be celebrated, and a win tomorrow would be a cherry on top of an excellent, excellent season. So pulling for them should be a fun bowl game, no doubt. All right. Before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. It's the #1 rated window company in Utah. Locally owned, the sales and installation are in-house, so no middleman markup. This is Nate Orchard, still the mayor of Sac Lake City. Jake Weber, 2 great people, good friends of the show, great families, local families. So they build, install, and guarantee for life. You have a lifetime warranty, which is transferable to the next homeowner, which is cool. Save energy with rebates from Dominion Energy. They have financing available, so you can save now and you can pay later. Fall special this week is it's actually the winter special now. It's $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. The weather, of course, is dipping if you come home from work and it's cold in your house. Probably because your windows need to be replaced, and you'll save a grip of money over time as well. So if you need windows now, you should definitely give them a call at 801-850-9100. But if you anticipate needing windows in the spring, like you're buying or selling a home, call now to get on the schedule and save that money. So the number is 801-850-9100. Visit them online at advancedwindows.com. That's our good friends at Advanced Window Products. All right, more coming up next on a Friday Drive. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up for a Friday show. Final segment of the day, final segment of the week. Been a fun week. We did a little best of the radio program on Christmas Eve and then had Christmas off. Back at it yesterday and today live, and we'll be back at it next week. Next week we will be off on New Year's Day. We have a grip of pro and college football to take care of you guys. If you're looking for the NFL or the biggest college football games in the market, make sure to realize that you get those here on ESPN 700, but we will be back next week. Fun time today. Shout out to our friends at Tim Dahle Nissan Southtown. 11155 South Jordan Gateway is the address. It's their year-end clearance sale. They're doing it at all Tim Dahle locations, and there's a grip of them across the course of the market. So just go to their websites, check out the great deals that they have to offer, and then come on out and, check out the year-end sale. So a couple of pieces of news came down today before we say goodnight. Tayshaun Lyons has entered the transfer portal, a wide receiver from the University of Utah. And the Sacramento Kings have fired Mike Brown. Mike Brown was the NBA Coach of the Year 2 years ago. He received a contract extension 5 months ago. And now he is out as the head coach of the Kings. Doug Christie, who played for them back in the day, has been their assistant coach, one of their assistant coaches for a number of years. He's now going to take over on an interim basis to see if he can get a really good, talented roster back on track. They're 13-18, I believe. They're out of the playoff race in the Western Conference. It has been an odd year for Scottie Scheffler, the number one golfer in the world, and just put together a golf season, the likes of which we really haven't seen since Tiger was doing Tiger things back in the mid-2000s, 2009. Well, news came out today that he suffered a puncture wound in the palm of his right hand from a broken glass while preparing dinner on Christmas Day and had surgery to remove glass fragments that's going to keep him out for 4 to 6 weeks. He's the reigning PGA Tour Player of the Year. He won 7 times in 2024. So he's going to withdraw from the 2025 season opener, which is the Century that's played in January in Kapalua. And he's planning, unless he's trying to come back for the American Express in La Quinta, California on January 16th. So hopefully he'll get back. But it's been a wild ride for him. He's been awesome. There was the situation where he got arrested trying to get into a tournament, and now apparently he was cooking some dinner on Christmas Day, broke a glass, and had to have fragments removed from his hand. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because that guy's had a wild year. And finally, before we say goodnight, some sad news. Greg Gumbel, 78 years old, has passed away. Veteran of CBS Sports, spent more than 50 years in sports broadcasting, has died of cancer at the age of 78. And I got to tell you, I had a chance to meet him on a number of different occasions. I did not know the man. I did interview him a couple of times. Sweet guy. And if you watched and thought, hey, that guy seems like a nice guy, he is. He was an excellent man, great family man, great broadcaster, gifted storyteller, and one of my favorites, certainly during March Madness, to listen to his takes on the Final Four. So there you go. All right, we're back on a Monday drive, but that's going to do it for this Friday. Special thank you today to Kyle Bonagura, Richard Smith, Frank Layden, Tony Jones, and the great Noah Eagle. If you missed any of the sound from the show today, or quite frankly ever, all week, you can check out the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. And then for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, it's called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's available via podcast wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things. In the comments, give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed. Special thank you to Olivia for filling in for Porter for the past couple of days. Of course, Cynthia, for keeping us on air and doing the best job possible, because she is the best. My name is Spence Checketts. Say goodnight. Enjoy your weekend. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Talk to you on a Monday drive. And as always, you can find it right here on ESPN 700.